Chapter 377. When the word moral sense was mentioned, most people would immediately think of something very bad. But in fact, the scope of this word was quite large. Any situation that violated the rules or morals, and could obtain pleasure from it, could be described as moral sense. Speaking of which, Rue Hui actually did some very evil things in the eyes of ordinary people. For example, recently, she used the identity of Golden Heron to wash the religious world with blood, killing almost all the diehards in the shrines and palaces, and so on. But these actions were only based on the consideration of interests and standpoints. It had nothing to do with Rue Hui's personal preferences, and she didn't obtain any pleasure from it. Otherwise, she would become a murderous maniac, and she wasn't such a person. So, no matter how many things Rue Hui did before, how many things she did that violated the rules or morals, it had nothing to do with moral sense. It was just a conflict of standpoints. And the scene of Rue Hui using a sharp sacrificial tool to draw a little turtle on the jade statue was purely for fun, and it didn't involve any interests or standpoints. Was this action more serious than killing people? Definitely not. Was it moral? It was definitely immoral. After all, in Rue Hui's understanding, the statue was very sacred and inviolable. So how could it be used for such boring entertainment? But in the process of Rue Hui doing this, she seemed to find that her mood seemed to be a lot better, and the depression that seemed to be surrounding her dissipated a lot. After casually drawing a little turtle on the face of the heavenly demon statue, Rue Hui turned around and asked, "Ryudo Koen, I drew." Rue Hui originally wanted to ask how did I draw, but who knew that the moment she turned her head, she found that Ryudo's face was actually very close to her face. Thinking about it, now that Ryudo was standing beside Rue Hui, and his hand was holding her wrist, the two's bodies were naturally very close. In this situation, when Rue Hui turned her head, her face was only a fist away from Ryudo's face, and it was almost the distance that she could breathe on each other's face. The moment they noticed this, the two were stunned at the same time, and they stared at each other's face in close proximity. What a beautiful face! Speaking of which, it seemed to be the first time Ryudo stared at Rue Hui's face at such a close distance, especially after she ate the elixir and returned to her youth. Even at this distance, the skin on Rue Hui's face was still delicate and flawless, tender and beautiful like a blooming flower. Coupled with her perfect facial features and her feminine charm, it was hard to imagine that she was a woman in her 50s. At the same time, Rue Hui also sensed the strong masculine scent on Ryudo at close range. This familiar smell and feeling reminded her of the unprecedented detoxification incident in the Kamishiro Imperial Garden. In fact, after the detoxification incident, Rue Hui had cursed herself countless times for being such a shameless woman. Speaking of which, although Ryudo's situation was critical at that time, it wasn't to the point that Rue Hui had to do it personally. It was actually just that she had a need in this area. So she waited for the opportunity to act, and she acted happily. After all, Rue Hui was also a normal woman of the right age, and it was normal to have a need in that area. But the situation at that time was so ridiculous that she couldn't help but feel dizzy every time she thought about it. Now, the two suddenly came into close contact, and Rue Hui smelled the familiar scent again and felt the touch of his solid body, causing this Kamiyoshi, who hadn't touched a man for a long time, to be unable to hold it in. Ugh. Back then, I was so embarrassed when she thought of the scene at that time. Rue Hui felt a bang in her head, as if 100,000 fireworks exploded at the same time, and her brain was almost fried. Because she was too shocked, Rue Hui couldn't help but blush slightly, and she threw the sacrificial tool in her hand on the ground and said, "I'm tired of this. Is there anything else to play with?" "Is that so? Then try to break this whole jade statue. Breaking this kind of thing can relieve a lot of stress." Ryudo also felt that the atmosphere became a bit awkward, so he quickly changed the topic and took out a huge hammer from nowhere. He should have hurriedly bought it from the Krypton Gold store. Smashing it seems like a good idea. For such an interesting suggestion, Rue Hui naturally wouldn't refuse, so she picked up the hammer and with the help of Ryudo, hammered at the jade statue. Because the whole body of the statue was made of jade, its hardness was actually not that good. Rue Hui hammered a few times, and Ryudo's 80, 80, 80 cheering, and quickly hammered down a hand. What do you mean by 80 question mark? It's a custom. When my hometown moves the hammer, they will shout 80. What a strange custom. Although Rue Hui secretly complained, she still silently recited this strange number in her heart. Bang, 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 rip, crack. As Rue Hui and Ryudo played more and more in the Chenjai Divine Palace, unknowingly, they broke the precious statue, tore the ancient scriptures, and broke the sacrificial tools that had been passed down for many years. In less than half an hour, the Divine Palace was already a mess. At first glance, it looked like a garbage dump, showing how much fun the two of them had. Phew. Ha 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 ha. When Rue Hui finally came back to her senses, she couldn't help but let out a happy laugh, as if she had obtained great satisfaction from the happy activity of the brat tearing down the house. At this time, Ryudo, who had poured a pile of kerosene inside the Divine Palace, walked over with a lighter and smiled at Rue Hui. Okay, the last step, directly send him to the sky with a fire in the future. This damned place has nothing to do with you. But this Divine Palace is connected to the Kyoto Imperial Garden next to it. If this is burned, well, this damned place is not your home. Burning it won't do you any harm. What are you afraid of? Seeing that Rue Hui was still a little hesitant, Ryudo forced the lighter into her hand and showed a forthright smile. This close smile moved Rue Hui. She looked at the lighter in her hand, then looked at Ryudo's face, and for a moment, she couldn't tell which side of the fire was more ferocious. Therefore, under Ryudo's support enticement, Rue Hui lit the lighter and burned the entire Chenjai Divine Palace to the ground. The flames, along with the kerosene that Ryudo had scattered, burned fiercely, illuminating the dark interior of the Divine Palace. Rue Hui stood at the door, watching the Divine Palace that had restrained her youth slowly being engulfed by the red lotus fire, and her eyes began to flicker slightly. In the rising air, she seemed to have returned to a few decades ago, to the countless torturous nights she had spent in this damned place. As the flames sublimated, Rue Hui also felt her already cold body and heart gradually become hot, as if her youth that had been buried here was burned away by the flames and returned to where it should be. Let's go. Seeing that the fire was getting bigger and bigger, Ryudo pulled Rue Hui's wrist, wanting to take her away from here. But Rue Hui shook her head, smiled, and said, "Wait, Ryudo-kun, I still have something to do." "What is it?" Just close your eyes first. This kind of thing is a little embarrassing." Looking at the smiling woman in front of him, although Ryudo didn't know what she was planning, he could only obediently close his eyes. What does Madame Rue Hui want to do? Since he couldn't let me see it, it must be something very obscene. For example, doing something indecent in the burning Divine Palace? Doing a striptease or something. Thinking of this, Ryudo's face unconsciously blushed, because it was hard for him to imagine that the usually dignified and elegant Madame Rue Hui would do something strange in this sacred place. But in reality, after Ryudo closed his eyes, he only felt a noble fragrance slowly approaching, and there was a strange feeling on his mouth. It was quite comfortable, like something smooth like jelly was gently pressed against his mouth, and then quickly retreated. This feeling is... Ryudo wasn't a virgin, so he naturally knew what this strange feeling meant. When he opened his eyes again, he saw Rue Hui looking at him with a smile, squinting her eyes. "There's something on your mouth. I helped you wipe it. Now it looks much better." After saying that, she hummed a song and walked out with light steps. It was as if the raging fire behind her had become frivolous and playful. "Ah, my mouth. Oh, okay. Thank you very much." So she just helped me wipe it. Looking at Rue Hui's leisurely back, Ryudo first unconsciously thanked her, and then quickly followed. But thinking about it carefully, was it really the touch of fingers or handkerchief? That soft jelly feeling, and the breath that was close to the limit? Aren't they all a little familiar? Ryudo didn't dare to think about it, and he didn't dare to ask. He could only drive the Wallace and bring Rue Hui, who seemed to be in a good mood, back to the Kamishiro Imperial Garden. "Mother, where did you go? You scared us to death." Seeing Rue Hui appear in the main hall, colored glaze, who was scared half to death by her sudden disappearance, couldn't help but run over and hug the woman who just did something big. Okay. You're about to get married, but you're still like a child, crying when you don't see anyone." After patting her daughter's back and smiling, Rue Hui looked at Ryudo, who was explaining to Jingyan and Yima. Slurp. Rue Hui couldn't help but lick her lips, and a sly look appeared in her eyes. So this is the legendary feeling of carrying someone. It feels pretty good. I should try it more in the future. Hee, but I have to carry colored glaze. Holding her beloved daughter in her arms, and looking at her daughter's future husband, Rue Hui couldn't help but think. At the same time, she felt like she suddenly became a lot younger, in all aspects. Chapter 378. After Rue Hui returned, the rest of the matters were easily resolved. She quickly and easily discussed with her in-law Kazuma about the situation of the two children's weddings. She also easily helped Kazuma solve many problems in the blink of an eye. For example, the Kamiyoshi family requested a Japanese wedding, the Saito family requested a Russian wedding, and the Tsukudri family requested a Western wedding. These three families each had their own groups of guests, and each had their own needs. Since this was the first mass wedding after the law was changed, it was 3 times more difficult to organize than a normal wedding. Especially when it came to preparation, it was practically hellish. It could be a complete mess at any moment. Regarding this, Rue Hui's solution was the mixed wedding method. The core idea was that after being together for a long time, they would separate for a long time, and after being separated for a long time, they would reunite. Although it sounded complicated, the core of this solution was that the Kenzaki, Tsukudri, and Saito families would prepare their own Japanese, Western, and Russian weddings in 3 different locations. Normally speaking, no matter what kind of wedding it was, there would be a few common processes. For example, welcoming the bride, welcoming the guests, giving a speech, exchanging rings, cutting the cake, toasting each table, and so on. Because the 3 families chose different wedding methods, they couldn't hold them together. In that case, they could have Ryudo appear at all 3 weddings at different times. For example, our Kamiyoshi family's wedding will be at 11:40 a.m. Then, the Tsukudri family's wedding will be at 12:20 a.m. and the Saito family's wedding will be at 12:20 a.m. Ryudo, Koen can go to the first and then the second. After all 3 family ceremonies are over, they can all gather and have a final group photo together. I see. That's a good idea. After hearing Rue Hui's words, Kazuma couldn't help but nod. Speaking of which, Kazuma was already having a hard time thinking about how to prepare for these 3 weddings. After all, he was an extreme gangster. He had never prepared a wedding before, especially when it came to the weddings of 3 rich families. Just thinking about it gave him a headache. Now, with Rue Hui's suggestion, things were much simpler. Next, she would be in charge of negotiating with Tsukimi and Seida's family about the wedding day schedule. She would see how to make Ryudo appear at various locations. Therefore, today's marriage proposal trip was actually the easiest one for Ima. He didn't even have to say anything, and Rue Hui had already made all the necessary arrangements. It was completely different from the chaotic situation when Tsukimori and Saito were having their discussions. And so before leaving, Kazuma couldn't help but say to Ryudo, as expected of Madame Kanzaki, "You truly are a heroine. Your work ability truly makes me feel ashamed of my inferiority." "Is that so? That's great." Ryudo replied absent-mindedly after hearing his father's words. For some reason, Ryudo always had a strange look on his face during the marriage proposal ceremony. It was as if he had a lot on his mind, and it seemed that he didn't dare to look at Colored Glaze's face. And after the car had already driven for some distance, Ryudo realized that he forgot one thing. He actually forgot to give the new wedding ring to Colored Glaze. Before this, Ryudo personally put the wedding ring on Yunyen and Dunia's hands. Although he still had to return the ring on the wedding day and wear it again during the ceremony, he couldn't only owe the colored glaze. "Pops, I'm going back. You go home first." Thinking of this, Long Do quickly opened the car window, threw out a sentence, and flew out of the car window, leaving Ima staring at the car window in a daze with an expression of "you're crazy." At the same time, with the return of Ruehue and the departure of Kazuma and Ryudo, the Kenzaki Imperial Garden returned to its usual tranquility. He, la 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 la. After the guests left, Ruehue leisurely brewed tea in her small tea room. However, her younger sister, Jingyan, who was sitting opposite her, couldn't help but feel that something was wrong with her. Sis? Did something good happen today?" Because she was too curious, Jingyan couldn't help but ask. According to what Jingyan knew, her sister should have been in a very complicated mood recently. Perhaps it was even a little bad, which was why she left early in the morning without saying goodbye. But when she was brought back by Ryudo, those complicated feelings were gone forever. She even felt like she had returned to her youth. Although it was a little strange, in Jingyan's opinion, her sister had indeed become much younger, especially in terms of temperament. Previously, Ruehue Kenzaki always gave people a feeling of magnanimity, calmness, elegance, and strictness. She was a woman who perfectly fit the role of Kenzaki Imperial Garden Master. She had a dignified aura without being angry. But now, the current leader of the Kamikaze clan was humming a song as she brewed tea. The corners of her mouth were curled up into an adorable smile, and her facial features had become much gentler. She was like a completely different person from the previous Ruehue. About this, it's probably because I've thought it through. I was too foolish before. After pouring tea for her sister, Ruehue couldn't help but shake her head. "That's great. Can I ask what's the turning point that you've thought it through?" "I can't tell you that, even if it's you." He. When she saw the devilish smile on her elder sister's face and sensed the lust of a young girl, Jingyan immediately understood what the opportunity was. It was a man. It was definitely related to men. Gulp. Thinking of this, Jingyan couldn't help but gulp. "Speaking of which, how long has it been since my sister's husband passed away? No, speaking of which, do I really have a brother-in-law?" Actually, Jingyan had been confused about who Ruehue's husband was for many years. But even so, she was happy that her sister was able to open her heart and find true love again. However, while the two sisters were drinking tea and chatting in the tea room, a rapist suddenly appeared in Colored Glaze's room. "Hey, I'm back." Not long after, Ryudo, who had sneaked back, opened Colored Glaze's window and jumped in. Colored Glaze was removing her makeup when she suddenly saw a figure push open the window and appear in front of her. She almost sprayed makeup remover all over her face. After barely managing to steady the liquid in her hand, Colored Glaze didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Are you crazy? You scared me. I hope you can call this a pleasant surprise." Instantly, Ryudo revealed a joyful smile at his fiancée. It seemed that seeing Colored Glaze's panicked appearance was very interesting to him. After that, he walked up to Colored Glaze and said with a smile, "Actually, I came back because there's something else I want to do." "What is it?" "Aha. Just close your eyes first. It's a bit embarrassing." "What are you doing? We're already an old married couple." Although Luli said this on the surface, she still obediently closed her eyes. At the same time, she pouted her lips slightly, with a come and kiss me gesture. Obviously, she roughly knew what Long Do wanted to do. Colored Glaze said that she didn't want to play this kind of game to increase the mood, but she was very honest in her heart. It was also because of her personality that Ryudo especially liked to tease her. But what Colored Glaze didn't expect was that in the next second, what welcomed her was not a passionate kiss, but the feeling of a warm and slightly rough object brushing across her lips. Without a doubt, this wasn't the feeling of lips, but of fingers. After opening her eyes, Colored Glaze looked at Ryudo, who was staring at her. She asked in annoyance and amusement, "Can you explain what you're doing? Can you feel what just happened?" "Nonsense. Can't you tell the difference between lips and fingers?" At this point, Colored Glaze stretched out her slender white finger and brushed it across Ryudo's lips. Then, she leaned over and kissed him on the lips. She smiled and said, "Can you tell now? It's not the same feeling at all. It's far from the same." "Okay, I completely understand." Gulp. As Ryudo spoke, he swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and the expression on his face became more and more strange. However, he didn't tell Colored Glaze exactly what was strange about it. After all, this kind of thing couldn't be said even if he died. Otherwise, Colored Glaze might chop him into pieces on the spot. Perhaps wanting to change the topic, Ryudo immediately took out the wedding ring that he had prepared beforehand and put it on Colored Glaze's finger. But because he was a little uneasy, he put it on her middle finger. "Did you come back to make fun of me?" Looking at the ring on her middle finger, Colored Glaze couldn't help but extend her finger vertically to show her fiancé how luxurious this wedding ring was. Seeing Ryudo awkwardly put the ring on her finger again, Colored Glaze sighed and said, "You forget it, let's talk about something serious." "Something serious? Is there anything more important than our wedding?" Immediately, Ryudo put his arm around his fiancé's shoulder and said in a flattering tone, as if he was trying to cover up his ugly behavior, "Of course, there is. Ahem, yesterday Aunt Jingyan said that there are more women than men in the Kansai Imperial Garden, and the yang energy is thin, so it's better to have more people." Speaking of this, Colored Glaze's pretty face blushed slightly, obviously understanding what her aunt was hinting at. Of course, Jingyan's hint wasn't as simple as the Kamiyoshi family having fewer people. Now that the situation of Colored Glaze, Yunyen, and Dunya coexisting together was unavoidable, and seeing that Tsukihime family's eldest daughter was pregnant, the Kamiyoshi and Saito families naturally didn't want their daughters to fall behind. From a certain point of view, this was a different kind of harem fight. Although this kind of harem fight was Ryudo's favorite. Therefore, he immediately understood and carried Lu Li up from the chair. As he walked toward the bed, he smiled and said, "I can do something to help. Why don't we start now?" Wait. At least wait until night time. It's still big white. MMPH. Clang. The originally open window was now locked from the inside. The curtains on the future of the Kansai family's flourishing family were slowly being drawn from today onwards. Chapter 379. After Ryudo discussed the details of the wedding with the three major families, the only thing left was to prepare and invite the guests. Due to the fact that the four major organizers of this wedding, namely the Black Hand Alliance, Kamiyoshi Clan, Tsukudri Group, and Saito Club, had a very high status, the wedding venue was naturally as grand as possible, and there were as many guests as they wanted. In addition, because this was the first mass wedding after the marriage law was changed, the new family, including Ryudo and the three young misses, also received a lot of attention. Of course, it was mainly on the internet. People like to talk about all kinds of romantic affairs, so they were naturally quite happy to hear that Ryudo Kiryu was going to marry three beauties at once. Of course, only a few people sincerely congratulated Ryudo and the three beauties. Most of the netizens had always regarded Ryudo as the biggest scourge of the century because he ruined three national goddesses at once. Especially when people posted photos of the three young misses on the internet, it triggered a monstrous wave of crusades against the evil dragon. In just a few days, products such as Ryudo Kiryu Cursed Doll, Ryudo Kiryu Death T-shirt, Ryudo Kiryu Stepping on the Carpet, and other venting products were flying everywhere on the internet, and the sales were skyrocketing. Someone even developed a game that Ryudo Kiryu's head explodes with a click of the mouse and put it on the website. According to statistics, the total number of hits exceeded 1,000 trillion in 3 days, which showed how deep the resentment of the public was. However, while the anti-Ryudo wave was in full swing on the internet, Dragon products had already made a lot of money. At this time, Takahara Masato, who led the development of a series of Ryudo Kiryu venting products, was happily counting the money as he watched the company's sales soar. He laughed and scolded the group of idiots on the internet. "Those guys are idiots. The boss's portrait rights are in our hands. Other than our company, Who else would develop this kind of venting product? They hate the boss and give him money at the same time. They are so stupid. Gao Yuan shook his head and then went back to urge the toy development team to continue to develop more Ryudo venting products. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to make more money. Just like this, the wedding of the century was about to begin. The night before the wedding, Ryudo received a special phone call. At this time, he was busy choosing a dress for the whole day, and he felt more tired than fighting a few fights. However, the voice that came from the phone made Long Do perk up all of a sudden. "Hello? You are Ryudo-kun, it's been a while." A familiar voice that sounded somewhat cold came out of the phone. Ryudo only knew one woman with such a special voice, and there might not be a second one in the world. "Rihanna? Are you okay? Recently? Sorry, I don't think I should ask about your whereabouts." When he received the call from the former Tenmu Group Guard Department, Rihanna Tajima, Ryudo was stunned and asked a question out of curiosity, but he quickly took back his words. From a personal point of view, Ryudo and Rihanna didn't have any personal grudges, and the relationship between the two was more or less subtle. But from a collective point of view, Ryudo and Rihanna were still in a hostile state, or Rihanna was still in a state of being hunted by them. When Ryudo's wedding was ready and was about to begin tomorrow, many people didn't notice that the Tenma Group, a monster that was once powerful enough to cover the sky with one hand, had quietly come to an end. With Iam's disappearance, Huan En's death, Nikolai's betrayal, and the civil war with Rihanna and Yomi, the Tenma Group was now torn apart, and most of them hid in the dark and migrated to other countries. But even so, the group of higher-ups who had done all kinds of evil in the group in the past couldn't escape punishment. For example, Rihanna and Yomi, who were still alive among the 4 department heads, became wanted criminals and were marked with a huge bounty. Of course, Ryudo didn't think that Rihanna would be caught or killed because of this. She wasn't that weak. It could only be said that Rihanna might have to change her identity in the future to appear in this world. Naturally, she couldn't attend Ryudo's wedding openly. "It's okay." Rihanna smiled and said, "I heard that you and Yunyen are getting married. I can't be there in person, but I'll still send a congratulatory gift. How about I give you a complete set of whip, candle, and wooden horse?" "Are you kidding? Do you think Yunyen will?" Ryudo wanted to say, "Do you think Yunyen will be that kind of person?" Who knew that he stopped halfway because he knew that Yunyen might really be that kind of person. For Yunyen, who had always been a thrill seeker, if she discovered a new way to play, she would definitely happily try it out on Dragon Fight. Ryudo didn't want his cute wife to become an S or M, so he righteously rejected Rihanna's gift. TSK, what an unromantic man. Rihanna, who was rejected by Ryudo, seemed to feel that it was a pity, but she also changed the topic to a very special place. Speaking of which, after that, you still couldn't find Lady Iam, right? When Lady Iam was mentioned, even Rihanna couldn't help but sigh, so much so that she didn't even want to say the word corpse. Most of the members of the Heavenly Eye group were pulled into the group because of Iam's personal charm. Rihanna was one of the best among them, and she even had a special relationship with Iam, which was not something that outsiders would know. Yes. Ryudo also sighed and said, "That woman is really amazing. I don't know how she did it without leaving a corpse. Not even a strand of hair could be found." This was also a question that had troubled Ryudo for a long time. He really couldn't understand what had happened at that time. If Iam was still alive, she would definitely reorganize the Heavenly Eye group and continue to fight for her ideals, but she didn't. Judging from the situation of the Heavenly Eye group being torn apart to such an extent, she was definitely no longer in this world. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to watch her years of painstaking effort being wasted. But if that woman was already dead, where was her corpse? Where did the corpse go? Because he was at the scene at that time. Ryudo was 100% sure that no one could take away Iam's corpse from the buildings that were about to collapse and were surrounded by raging flames. That woman seemed to have turned into a butterfly in the raging flames and flew silently to hell. It was unbelievable. But at this moment, Rihanna asked a question that made Ryudo's scalp tingle. Ryudo-kun, do you believe that the time tunnel or time travel really exists? Huh? The moment he heard this question, Ryudo trembled and almost dropped the phone in his hand. From a certain point of view, Rihanna really asked the right person. After all, Ryudo himself had experienced time travel and was a transmigrator from another plane. How could he not believe that thing existed? But even so, Ryudo still replied with a dry smile. How is that possible? Do you want to say that Ayam didn't land on the ground when she fell down, but through some kind of time tunnel to another place? As he spoke, Ryudo unconsciously broke out in a cold sweat. Impossible. This kind of thing was impossible. Although he said so, he felt a little scared in his heart. He had to admit that Ayam's situation was really too strange. Her body was installed with the most advanced semi-permanent biochip made by the Heavenly Eye Group. No matter where she went in the world, it would send back information. But even after Rihanna used the Heavenly Eye Group tracking system, he couldn't track Ayam's whereabouts. It was as if this person had directly turned into a phantom and disappeared from this world. Ryudo had personally experienced this kind of strange disappearance. In his previous life, he was inexplicably lying in bed reading a novel. When he came back to his senses, he had already appeared in the dilapidated warehouse with the sea breeze blowing. Logically speaking, since Ryudo was likely to transmigrate, then other people might also encounter the same situation. It can't be? Could it be? That guy. Just as Ryudo was thinking about this with cold sweat, Rihanna on the other end of the phone side. That's right, it's the age of science now. Transmigrating to another time and space, or even having some kind of system after transmigrating, can only appear in those novels that don't talk about science. That's really quite unscientific. Okay, in short, I will think about the gift again. I wish you and Yunyen a happy marriage. That's it, I will come back to play with you when I have time. Beep, beep, beep. When Rihanna on the other end said that he would come back to play with Ryudo next time and hung up the phone, Ryudo held the phone in his hand that seemed to have become heavy and couldn't calm down for a long time. The woman who disappeared, Tenmu Ayam. What's the situation now? Ryudo didn't dare to think about it. It was useless to think about it. In short, he only knew that he was about to have a grand wedding with the 3 female protagonists in the game Red Album 2, No Survivors, and from then on, he would live a shameless life. As for other things, it had nothing to do with him, unless that woman appeared in front of Ryudo again. Just like this, Ryudo put down the phone and returned to his room, waiting for the day that would make him the happiest man in the world. However, he didn't know if it was a coincidence or the will of the heavens. But when Ryudo closed the door of his room, a bolt of lightning struck down from the clouds in the distance, and coincidentally, it struck the almost abandoned, unrestrained sky tower. Chaos. As night fell, the dark chaos shrouded the world. In another area of chaos that was even darker, a woman lying on a chair slowly opened her Devil King's eyes. Chapter 380. In Buddhism, the sixth heaven was also known as the Parinirvana heaven, seizing what he has transformed into to amuse himself. Hence the saying, he has transformed into freedom. There was no doubt that the act of plundering others for one's own entertainment was quite vile, whether it was plundering material, emotional, or life. But to a certain woman, the desire to plunder was so strong that she couldn't control it. It was something that had long been integrated into her blood. Nighttime, Tokyo port. Looking at the distant sea from the port, the first thing that came into view was naturally a huge bay. However, in the middle of the Gulf of Tokyo, on an artificial island several kilometers away from the coast, there was an incomparably huge tower standing tall. Those with a little insight would know very well that this was the headquarters of the multinational giant Heavenly Eye Group that spanned across many fields such as arms, medicine, and so on. And the name of the tower was Unfettered Sky Tower. The design of the Unfettered Sky Tower was quite strange and abstract. The 6 parts of the building were gradually connected to form the main body, and the spiral shape that kept extending upward was even more straight to the sky. Together with a height of 666 meters, it looked like some kind of strange religious base, not the headquarters of a company. Of course, no serious international company would go to the vast Gulf of Tokyo to artificially reclaim the sea to create an artificial island, and then move their company headquarters there. The only way to go or leave this unfettered sky tower was by helicopter. From the helipad on the top floor of the tower all the way to the inside, after walking through a few long corridors, one would come to a spacious study. The study was extremely spacious, and the decoration style inside was very chaotic. The cute and childish girls' white walls were hung with rich watercolors of famous masters, and the solemn and elegant European-style white lacquer bookshelf was filled with all kinds of broken figurines. The floor of the study was covered with a safiwood carpet made of silk, wool, and gold thread that was worth millions of dollars. And on this valuable carpet, there were traces of someone's spray paint. The style was chaotic, and the furnishings were overcrowded. It could be said that the desk was not matched with the bookcase was not matched with the carpet was not matched with the wall, and the wall was not matched with the desk. However, there was a benefit to this strange study. Anyone who stepped into this study would realize that they were definitely not dealing with a normal house owner. Of course, the owner of this place was a lady who was currently sitting on the large recliner with her eyes closed as if she was in a trance. Although her brain wasn't normal, her appearance was definitely first class. She was wearing a very luxurious red dress. She did not wear any jewelry, and her face was not painted with any makeup. No matter how precious the jewels were, they couldn't match her temperament of looking down on the world. No matter how good the cosmetics were, they could only add to her unparalleled beauty. In short, the owner of the unfettered sky tower, Heaven I Am, was indeed a beauty that could drive any man crazy. However, this great beauty seemed to be sleeping soundly. At this moment, a bolt of lightning suddenly flashed outside the window not far away. Kaboom! The lightning coincidentally struck the unfettered sky tower. The loud noise startled the sleeping beauty, and she slowly opened her eyes that seemed to be connected to the abyss. The moment she woke up, I Am narrowed her eyes slightly before closing them again. Am I dreaming? Or am I already dead? When she saw the familiar ceiling of the study, I Am's first reaction was that she was dreaming, or perhaps this place was hell. Speaking of which, it was strange because in I Am's mind, she should be a dead person. At the last moment of her life, what appeared in her devil-king eyes was a burning manor, a sweeping wind, a collapsing building, and a stinky man who reached his hand out to her. Humph, 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 humph. Such an ending is quite suitable for me, the last descendant of the Heaven I clan. Back then, the demon king of the sixth heaven had died in Hinoji. He had also died in the flames and collapsed buildings. Yongji had also died in the same way as her ancestor. It could be considered a kind of reincarnation. But just as I Am was thinking about this, the phone on the desk in front of her suddenly rang, interrupting her thoughts. Phone? Wait a minute? There are phones in hell? The moment the phone rang, I Am was stunned for a moment. Then, she casually picked up the phone, wanting to hear which demon wanted to spar with her. If you have something to say, spit it out quickly. Lord I Am, it's Yamamoto. I have something to report. A voice that didn't have much of a presence came from the phone and reported a name that didn't have much of a presence. Yamamoto? Something to report? Hearing this, I Am finally realized that something was wrong. This phone was undoubtedly real. The man's voice on the other side of the phone was also real. The familiar office around her was also real, including herself. What's going on? I'm not dead? And who's this guy on the phone? Why does it sound so familiar? Speaking of which, I Am's memory was actually very good. She could easily remember almost everyone she had met since she was born, so she should be able to remember who the person on the other side of the phone was. But as far as she knew, the guy called Yamamoto, who seemed to be F***ed every day, should be an unlucky guy who had been dead for almost 2 years. His body should have turned into ashes. Why would he call her? Although she was somewhat confused, I hurriedly went into her daily work mode and said in a light tone, "What's the matter? Just say it." "Lord, that brat Ryudo Kirio seems to be getting restless. He seems to have noticed the existence of our Heavenly Eye group and is planning to put on a show for Miss Kanzaki blabber blabber blabber." As for what Yamamoto said on the other end of the phone, Yongji didn't pay attention to half of it. Her mind was filled with a bunch of what the C case mud horses galloping past. What was this? Was this the legendary transmigration? At this moment, finally regained her senses. It seemed that she hadn't died. Instead, she had mysteriously returned to nearly 2 years ago, to the time when she had schemed against Ryudo and the colored glaze. Remembered clearly that tonight, the undercover agent she had arranged for in the Kamiyoshi clan finally managed to kidnap Miss Colored Glaze, and then stuffed her into the Rulon Group's young master, Ryudo Kirio. She was going to have Ryudo and Miss Colored Glaze develop some sort of relationship that went beyond friendship. Logically speaking, this was a good idea to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. On one hand, it could give the Kamiyoshi clan a huge blow. On the other hand, it could also kill Ryudo with a borrowed knife and completely control the Rulon group under the Heavenly Eye group. But what also knew was that this plan had failed in the end. Ryudo, the young master she had always thought of as trash, just happened to become powerful from that night. Through a series of methods, he saved her and the Colored Glaze's lives. He even counterattacked the next day and eliminated all the undercover agents arranged by the Heavenly Eye group. Today was the first day that Ryudo Kirio's soul had transmigrated. It was also the first day that was interested in Ryudo, and actually transmigrated from the day she was prepared to die in the manner to the day Ryudo transmigrated. This situation was so messy that she didn't know what to say. After a while, Yamamoto, who had finished his report, asked, "Sama, what should we do next?" "Inform advisor Sakata to find someone to kill him." "Yes, then I won't disturb you." Beep. After hanging up, the woman on the other side of the phone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Good heavens, did I become a transmigrator? In novels, there are soul transmigration and body transmigration. Am I transmigrating or soul transmigrating? Thinking of this, Yongji lowered her head to look at the long, slender legs that were exposed from under the long dress. Her legs were now moving freely, unlike the miserable state where it was difficult to move when she was about to die in the manner. Forget it. Transmigrating is such a ridiculous thing. Let's not delve into other things. There's no point. Right, speaking of which, is there any special benefit for me as a transmigrator? It's in many novels, right? But just as was about to stand up and move around to think about what to do next, a strange sound effect suddenly rang in her mind. Beep, 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 la 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 la, What's going on? Beep. Detected low-level transmigrators' low desire to have a pie in the sky. Pay-to-win fate changing system officially activated. Suddenly, Iam's mind rang with this strange sound, and it seemed to be full of sarcasm. After that, a huge electronic screen floated in midair and suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. On this translucent electronic screen was written the words, "Pay-to-win fate-changing system." These words made people speechless. Pay-to-win fate-changing system. Description. Give those who wish to have a new life after transmigrating, but don't have the ability to do so a dream-like opportunity. This system's motto is use money to create happiness. Play with your coins if you don't have money. If you don't have money, please don't. Cha. Before the system finished its description, Iam had already reached out and grabbed the translucent electronic screen. She pulled the screen closer to her face, as if she was grabbing a piece of glass. Who do you think you are talking to? Who is the low-level transmigrator? Who is the scum of society without the ability to do so? As Iam spoke, she stuck her finger with red nail polish into the system screen. Her tone was full of threat, and her gaze was as if she was looking at a pile of trash. What is this thing? I am the Heavenly Eye, the demon king of the sixth heaven in this world. You, a little system, dare to be impudent in front of me? Are you looking for death? Why don't you throw this thing down from a height of 666 meters? Or would it be better to find a pack of hungry wolfhounds and slowly eat them? Or just throw it into a meat grinder and grind it up? While grabbing the unknown system, Iam's mind was already rapidly thinking about how to punish the system. As if it felt Iam's killing intent, the system screen suddenly trembled, and the words on it immediately changed. Emergency adjustment. Emergency adjustment. This system is now officially renamed as Iam-sama. I am your dog system. Description. This system will specially serve the great heavenly Iam-sama. Iam-sama, unparalleled in the world. Iam-sama, eternal God. Iam-sama. This system is your loyal dog. Please order it as you wish. Woof woof. That's more like it. Seeing that this Iam-sama, I am your dog system, was quite tactful, Iam forgave it, and opened the system interface to observe. At this time, Iam's personal interface looked like this. Name. Heavenly IIMH. 26 years old attributes. Wisdom LV5, Physique LV4, Courage LV5, Insight LV5, Charm LV5 title. 6th Heavenly Demon. When equipped, can break through the attribute limit to LV6. Equipment. None total assets. US $666. 6 billion. Now Iam's basic interface was roughly like this. Under the attributes, there was a basic introduction. LV1. Human Scraps LV2, Excellent Passerby LV3, Professional Expert LV4, International Warrior LV5, Extreme Superman. LV6, Heavenly Demon Monarch. Chapter 381. What the hell is this? My stats are just too bad. After seeing her specific attributes, Iam couldn't help but squint, as if she was unhappy. So she asked the system, "Hey, these are all LV4 and LV5. Are you looking down on me, bastard? They should be at least LV99. Sorry, Lord Iam. LV5 is already the strongest human. The strongest human. I'm not a human. What does the strongest human have to do with me?" Iam silently cursed, but when she saw her LV4 physique, she more or less knew why she lost to Ryudo. So my physique is only at LV4, International Warrior. That's too weak. Although Iam didn't like to fight with people personally, it didn't mean that she didn't learn some martial arts. It was just that she didn't improve, and it wasn't even registered in the skill bar. But when she was forced to a dead end by Ryudo, she realized that this was wrong. No matter how strong the Heavenly Eye group was, as long as they met an unreasonable expert like Ryudo, they would be on the verge of death the moment the two sides got close. After all, Ryudo's strength was too strong in the later stage. He had reached the true limit of humans. He was no different from Superman. This left a deep impression on Iam. So since she was reborn, Iam had to make up for her weakness. At this time, she also saw a small plus beside her 5 attributes. Iam curiously pressed the plus, and the system popped up. Do you want to increase the attribute level? Increase the attribute level. So it can be increased directly. Originally, when she saw her Wisdom LV5, Physique LV4, Courage LV5, Insight LV5, Charm LV5 garbage attributes, Iam felt very unhappy. However, if he could level up through the system, it would be different. Unfortunately, he could only level it up to LV6. Why couldn't he level it up to LV99? What a pity. However, the moment Iam clicked yes, another message popped up from the system. Upgrading from LV4 Physique to LV5 Physique requires 5 billion renminbi. Confirm payment? The cost of increasing attributes was so cheap. Only 5 billion? It was practically a free gift. Although Iam had already guessed that all the services in the system would cost money, 5 billion for one upgrade was too cheap. Who was Iam? She was the boss of the Heavenly Eye Group, the weapons department and pharmacy department. Under her were money printing machines. She had as much money as she wanted. Now, Iam had a total of 6 billion inch in her personal vault, and this was only the amount of money that Ayam had put in her account for auspiciousness. If one were to talk about the true amount of money that Ayam could move, it would be an astronomical figure. It was almost equivalent to the national budget. If it really only required 5 billion to increase attributes once, Ayam could raise it to LV99. The prerequisite was that she was able to do so. Thinking to this point, Ayam still clicked the confirm button. After clicking, Ayam's total assets immediately decreased by 5 billion, but at the same time, her body underwent a huge change. She immediately felt as light as a swallow, as if every part of her body was within her control. At the same time, her body was filled with an unbelievable explosive power. This was the realm of LV5 Constitution, Extreme Superman. So that's how it was. I understand why I lost. It was because Ryudo, that bastard, also had this system. After feeling the benefits of a Constitution upgrade, Ayam immediately understood how Ryudo defeated her. 2 years ago, Long Do was just a hooligan who was locked up in a warehouse and was on the verge of death. In just 2 years, he had already become a super monster who could dance on a mountain of blades and sea of fire. In such a short time, such a huge change. If it was said that Ryudo relied on his own training, then Ayam would never believe it. But if it was bought by the system, then it could be explained. But since LV5 was already so strong, then what would LV6 be like? Thinking to this point, Ayam continued to click on the plus next to LV5 Constitution. She wanted to see the situation after upgrading to LV6 Constitution. Demonic Monarch. From LV5 Constitution to LV6 Constitution requires Shattered Nation Jade. Suddenly, a strange message popped up in the system box. Shattered Nation Jade. What is this? Shattered Nation Jade, an item that can be obtained after destroying a country. It represents the end of a country. An item that can be obtained after destroying a country? It sounded interesting. If it was a normal person, this item that could easily destroy a country would be very difficult to obtain. But for Ayam, it might not be the case. Their Heavenly Eye clan's mission was to destroy the world. Destroying a country was just a necessary part of the process. It was nothing. But at least Ayam didn't have the Shattered Nation Jade, so she couldn't upgrade to LV6 for the time being. What a disappointment. Anyway, let's look at the shop. After knowing that her personal attributes couldn't be upgraded, Ayam opened the shop and looked at the messy Hooligan series items and skill books. Oh, this is not bad. This is not bad. I want them all. Ayam basically didn't look at the price when buying items. As long as she saw something she liked, she would buy it and happily play with it in her hands. Not long after, she spent tens of billions to buy all kinds of items and equipment. Then she turned to look at the skill books on the other side. There were so many skill books in the Krypton Gold Shop that it felt like she had come to a museum of human skills. However, it was clear that Young-ji wasn't interested in those ordinary skills. Instead, she turned her attention to the more bizarre items. What is this? Inner Force Skill Book. Maybe the system was too scared by Ayam, but the Krypton Gold Shop was now fully open. It didn't have to slowly open the shop like Ryudo. Among all the skill books, the Inner Force Skill Book was actually separated to browse. And the variety was much more than expected. What were the ordinary Inner Force skills? Chinquan Foundation Skill, Body Strengthening Skill, Youthful Rejuvenation Skill, Heavenly Cycle Skill, etc. What were the literary skills? Indian Secret Technique, Princess Divine Technique, Test of the 8 Extraordinary Meridians, Primitive Pill Subprescription Technique, etc. What were the stupid skills? Breathing Technique even monkeys can understand, Fasting Divine Technique for paupers, Death in situ for 10 seconds, Celestial Secret Oil Removal, etc. But although these Inner Force skill books looked very strange, to Ayam, they were still not enough. They didn't suit her taste. So she asked directly, they all look too ordinary. Is there anything that can release a death ray from one's eyes or shoot bullets from one's fingers after cultivation? Hearing this, the system was speechless. After being stunned for a while, it replied, recommended to purchase Demonic Disintegration Technique, Omnidirectional 8 Desolation Technique, Taoist heart, demonic seed technique. Still too ordinary. Forget it. Anyway, these are the only things I can buy here. Although I wanted to buy a skill book that could turn her into an alien, she couldn't find it. She could only follow the system's recommendation and buy a bunch of inner force skill books. Sky Demon Disintegration Technique has been purchased. Proficiency 20% Omnidirectional 6 Desolation Skill has been purchased. Proficiency 20% Tao Heart Demon Seed Technique has been purchased. Proficiency 20% Sunflower Manual has been purchased. Proficiency 20%. Looking at the pile of skills that suddenly appeared in her skill bar, I frowned and said, "Why is the proficiency only 20%? Buying a single skill book can only increase 20% proficiency. Please buy it again." But the books are gone after buying them. How can I buy them again? After death, the shop will refresh again. Please slap. Without waiting for the system to finish, I gave it a big slap. I'll give you a chance. Say it again. Shiver, shiver, shiver. Beep. The shop has added a refresh option. Click to refresh the shop. After feeling I'll tear you apart if you say another word attitude. The system could only tremble and add a custom function for her. That's more like it. Nodded. She seemed to be very satisfied with this retarded system. After that, it was another round of crazy shopping. Did not have anything else, but she had a lot of money. After a frenzied shopping spree, Youngji directly bought all the 20 over inner force skills that she had bought to the max level, and the chi opening rate column had already reached the limit of 999%. Tisk, it's only 999%. And it can't continue to increase? How boring. Lord the 999% chi opening rate is unprecedented. Your potential has now been developed to the point where it exceeds the limit. Is that so? Then I'm very strong now? Actually, even without the system's notification, could feel the chi flowing in her body. In the end, the light force, dark force, and Dan force that martial artists cultivated were all within the 100% chi opening rate system. Youngji, on the other hand, now possessed an unprecedented 999% chi opening. The power of her blood chi had already reached the peak. If she went any further, she would be able to break through the void and become a saint. Yes, Lord you are now invincible. You can hit anyone with a punch, unless, bang. Before the system's voice died away, punched its display screen. With one punch, the system's display panel was directly punched through. It looked quite miserable. No, it doesn't feel good to hit this thing. Let's find a living person to try. It's not a bad idea to find him. After shaking her head, turned off, Lord I'm your dog system. She picked up the phone and said to the assistant on the other side, "Go and inform Nicholas. Tell him to come back in 3 hours. I have something urgent to discuss." Chapter 382. For what she needed now was a human punching bag. And she had already decided on the identity of the human punching bag. That would be the head of the Heavenly Eye Group's weapons department, Nikolai. Don't misunderstand. Didn't mind Nikolai betraying her before and even wanted to throw a bunch of bombs down to blow her up. Actually liked it when her subordinates betrayed her. What made her unhappy was that Nikolai's betrayal had no sense of beauty at all and was simply disgusting. In mind, what was the scene of betrayal like? It was definitely her fighting in the front while Nikolai stabbed her in the back. After the stab, he would laugh and say, "You didn't expect this, did you? I'm a traitor. I've wanted to kill you for a long time." But what did Nikolai do when he threw a bomb down to kill He didn't say anything, and just threw a bomb down to carry out a carpet bombing. What was the point of that? At least when he threw the bomb down, he should have used the loudspeaker to shout at who was in the manor below. Right? He would be considered qualified if he shouted a few words. Such a betrayal with no sense of beauty made who was very strict in this aspect, very unhappy. So she decided to let Nikolai know what a real betrayal was. Just like that, After Yongji made this call, Nicholas, who was far away in a foreign country at this time, hurriedly rushed over here. As the head of the Heavenly Eye Group's weapons department, Nikolai's daily tasks were very busy, and he often had to discuss arms deals with various organizations overseas. But Iam was the head of the Heavenly Eye Group after all, and after this call, Nikolai rushed over to the unrestrained Sky Tower as fast as he could, even if he was far away in a foreign country. Really? I don't know what urgent matter Lady Iam is looking for me for, but at least let me know in advance. After flying back in the supersonic plane at the fastest speed, it was already the morning of the second day. Even though he was tired from the journey, Nikolai still hurried to Iam's study after getting off the plane, afraid that he would exceed the 3-hour time limit. No problem. Only 2 hours and 50 minutes had passed since the call ended. There were still 10 minutes left. When he knocked on the door of Madame Iam's study, Nikolai thought with relief. Come in. Yes. Nikolai pushed open the door after getting permission and walked in with a straight step and asked, Lord Yongji. Before he finished speaking, a fishing net suddenly fell from the sky. It directly covered Nicholas, who had just entered the door. What? The fishing net seemed to have a strong stickiness. When it wrapped around Nicholas's body, it was still tightly wrapped around his body. The Minister of Arms could not even lift his arms. He could only be tied up like a dumpling and fall to the ground. Lady, Iam. Do you have any misunderstandings about me? Looking at the figure slowly walking towards him, Nicholas asked in a puzzled tone. From Nikolai's point of view, he was truly innocent. Not long ago, I was still running around everywhere for you, and one phone call from you made me fly all the way back. In the end, when I came back, I was directly served with a fishing net. What did I do to offend you? However, after Iam walked over with a smile, she pulled up the fishing net and hung Nikolai's body in the air. She smiled and said, You didn't offend me, at least not now. Then why did you? No reason. I just want you to know what betrayal is. What? What does that mean? Betrayal? Just when Nicholas was racking his brains, but still couldn't figure out the meaning of the sentence, Yongji elegantly stretched out a finger and directly tapped on his wrist shoulder. How much power could a single finger have? At most, it would just be a scratch. But the moment Iam's finger touched him, Nikolai felt as if his shoulder was directly pierced by an iron nail, and the puncture point went straight into his bone marrow. Ugh. The intense pain rushed into his brain, and Nikolai could not help but roar loudly. But this miserable scream did not arouse Iam's pity at all. She did not have such a thing as pity. So that's how it is. Iam casually pulled out her blood-stained finger, smiled, and said, Is this the power of Qi? Not bad, not bad. With 999% Qi, Iam's internal strength was comparable to those mythical masters in novels. At her level, the flesh and blood of an ordinary person was as fragile as a wet tissue in front of her. Even if she didn't count her LV5 constitution, which had already reached the limit, she could still pierce through steel with just her Qi. Iam had never experienced this feeling before, so she curiously did various experiments on Nikolai's body. For Nikolai, the next half an hour felt like he was being dismembered. The pair of white jade-like slender hands seemed to have become two sharp blades, tearing his flesh, cutting his nerves, and crushing his bones. When Iam finally had enough, Nikolai was already half dead, and his body looked like a tattered rag. Kill me. Although he did not understand what Iam was doing, Nikolai was too lazy to ask the reason. He just wanted to die quickly. But would Iam be so kind to kill him? Of course not. This was the world's most evil person. So at this time, she shouted outside, Lin Hua, is the thing ready? Yes, Master Iam, the thing is ready. After hearing the boss's call, Lin Hua, the head of the guard department, who had been waiting at the door for a long time, also came in. Nikolai, this guy, what did he do? Looking at Nikolai, who was trapped in a special fishing net and had been tortured beyond recognition, Lin Hua sighed slightly and arranged for people to carry this guy out. Where are they going to take me? In a daze, Nikolai only felt that he was carried into a helicopter, and there were medical staff giving him first aid injections and doing some emergency rescue work. After an unknown amount of time, when Nikolai opened his eyes, he was already tied up and fixed to a large cross. It was early in the morning, and the sea breeze with a slightly fishy smell was blowing around. Coupled with the endless sea level not far away, it was easy to see that this was definitely not within the scope of Tokyo. Just at the moment when Nikolai felt inexplicable, a huge dark cloud suddenly floated in the sky, as if it was going to cover the surrounding sky, and quickly floated over here. That is the sixth sky devil. Nikolai looked up, and his eyes almost popped out. Isn't this the war-killing machine that I participated in the design and production of? This huge machine was at least 5 times the length and width of an ordinary plane, and it was as amazing as a huge aircraft carrier sailing in the sea of clouds. The most terrifying thing was that Nikolai could clearly see that the bomb hatch below was slowly opening. The bomb hatch opening was the precursor to a fixed-point bombing. Nikolai had seen this scene many times, but he didn't expect that the bomb hatch would open in front of him. The next moment, a large number of unguided bombs fell from the sky, almost covering the entire beach in the bombing zone. Tenmu, I am. When did I offend you? And in the center of the explosion zone, Nikolai, who was tied up, could only let out a weak cry, and then buried in the violent explosion that he had designed. Until he was blown to ashes, Nikolai still didn't understand what all this was for. But for Ayam, who was sitting in the bridge of the sixth Sky Devil, she clearly knew that it was better to get rid of this rebellious man as soon as possible, so that he wouldn't bite back at her in the future. At the same time, looking at Nikolai, who was blown to ashes below, Lin Hua carefully asked, Madam Ayam, now that Nikolai is dead, what should we do with the weapon department? Let the vice minister take care of it first. I have a very good candidate to replace Nikolai's job later. A very good candidate? That's right, go and contact the Nesting Duck Prison and find a name to release the leader of the Rulong Group. Rulong Group's leader? Tong Sheng-yuma? The moment he heard this name, Lin Hua really didn't understand. Speaking of which, the reason why Yuma was imprisoned was actually arranged by Lin Hua according to Madame Ayam's instructions, in order to control the Rulong Group, this extreme organization, in his hands, and when he needed to be used, he would be thrown out to die. But Madame Ayam wanted him to release Yuma? What's going on? Although he didn't know what Madame Ayam was thinking, Lin Hua could only do as she asked and didn't dare to ask anymore. What's going on? He felt that Madame Ayam was strange today, as if she was possessed by something strange. While Lin Hua asked someone to negotiate with the Nesting Duck Prison, he couldn't help but think to himself. And what Lin Hua didn't expect was that after Ayam settled Nikolai's matter and arranged for Yuma's release, she actually picked up her phone and dialed a special number. Beep, beep, beep. Hello, who is this? After the call was connected, a mature woman's voice came from the other end of the phone, but at the same time, it had the unique aura of a person in a high position. It's me, long time no see, how have you been? Faced with Ayam's scam-like response, the woman on the other end of the phone was silent for a while, and then she asked, Did you call to make fun of me? Tenmu Ayam. Ha ha ha, don't say that. Who would dare to make fun of you? The leader of Kamiyoshi. After hearing the voice of the woman on the other end of the phone, who was important to him, Ayam couldn't help but smile happily. Chapter 383. In Ayam's eyes, Rue Hui was a very special person, and she was also the person who she misjudged very seriously at the beginning. That's right, Ayam seriously misjudged Rue Hui. This was actually a very serious mistake. From the beginning, this woman had always given her a very righteous feeling, so she judged her as a mortal enemy in her life. Because good and evil could not coexist, gods and demons could not coexist. But from the situation 1 or 2 years later, Rue Hui did not seem to be so righteous, and even the way she did things had begun to become a little evil. According to Ayam's knowledge, this woman colluded with Ryudo to kill many people in Yatsuki-Kro, pushed herself to the highest golden heron seat, and also intended to abolish the Zaiwang system. Most of these methods were not honorable at all, and many were even bloody. To put it bluntly, it was no different from what the Heavenly Eye group did. But how to put it? Rue Hui, who would do such things by hook or by crook. Liked it very much. There was no doubt that Rue Hui was not a righteous person. She also hid very deep desires and obsessions in her heart, but she usually hid them very well. In addition, she originally thought that she was about to die. Many times, she felt a little lonely when she did things, so she seemed particularly tragic and selfless. It was not until Rue Hui met Ryudo and solved her terminal illness that she gradually exposed her hidden true side. She became more selfish, more daring, and more ruthless than before. If I knew that she was such a woman, I would have joined forces with her. Why did I have to go through so much trouble? After that, had thought so, but unfortunately, everything was too late. When she was reborn and knew this in advance, called Rue Hui and tried to ask her out for a talk. However, although thought so, Rue Hui's attitude was also very firm. Don't joke around. Why did you call me? You might as well tell me directly. Although the voice that came from the other end sounded very elegant, it was more or less cold and carried a sense of distance. This was a matter of course. After all, Rue Hui knew how vicious the woman on the other end of the phone was. She could be called a female demon. However, smiled and said, "Don't be so vigilant. Actually, I just want to ask you out for tea and chat and talk about national affairs or something." You? Ask me out? Come out for tea and chat? When Rue Hui heard this, she couldn't help but reveal a sarcastic smile. She laughed and said, "I'm afraid you're planning to use the cup as a signal and prepare a bunch of executioners to chop my head off. So that's what you're afraid of. How about this? You prepare tea in the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, and I won't bring anyone with me. I'll go find you myself. Is that okay?" "Sure, if you dare to come." With a sneer, Rue Hui hung up the phone with the crazy woman. Seriously, that guy is really bored. He called me so early in the morning to make fun of me. After hanging up the phone with Rue Hui sighed slightly and felt speechless. What a joke. Tenmu actually said that she wanted to come and chat with me. How is that possible? This is the Kamishiro Imperial Garden. It would be strange if she dared to come here alone. With this thought, Rue Hui continued to sit in the office and deal with official business until a strange sound came from the door. Plop. With a flash of a figure outside the door, a sound like something falling to the ground came into Rue Hui's ears. At that moment, Rabbit Ball, who was in charge of guarding the master of the cat house, suddenly appeared in front of the desk and said to Rue Hui in a serious tone, "Master Rue Hui, there seems to be a master outside. Please leave, quickly." Great master? Rue Hui frowned. After all, there should be no more than 5 people in the world who could be called a great master by Bunny Ball. In the middle of the day, there is a peerless master who wants to kill me? Wasn't this a little too, Walla? But in the next moment, when the door of the study was opened from the outside, the figure that appeared in front of her gave Rue Hui a fright. "Good morning. I came to have tea with you as promised, but it seems that the tea isn't ready yet." The person who pushed the door in was a woman with peerless beauty and peerless elegance. She looked at the tense situation inside and said in a frivolous tone, "Tion, Tenmu? How is that possible?" The moment they saw the woman, Rue Hui and Bunny Ball couldn't help but widen their eyes because this situation was really too difficult to understand. First of all, this crazy person really came? She just finished a phone call, and not long after, she really appeared in the Kamiyoshi's base camp? And she really did come alone. Secondly, her strength. How can she be so strong? Rue Hui had fought with for so many years, so she naturally knew about Iam's situation. Although this woman was talented and caused her body to be on a different level from ordinary people, she didn't like to personally fight, so her personal strength wasn't very shocking. But now even Bunny Ball couldn't help but secretly tremble when he saw her. Too strong, she was really too strong. Bunny Ball couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. After all, he had never seen such a strong monster. At this moment, Tenmu Ayam was flawless in the eyes of this old guardian ninja, as if her body was one with the environment. That feeling of being one with the heavens, one with one, was a special phenomenon that would only happen to peerless masters who cultivated Nigong. Even Bunnyball was far from this realm. But Ayam did it. Her cultivation in this aspect had silently surpassed Bunnyball. How is this possible? Damn it, what's wrong with this fellow? Did she eat the wrong medicine? No, the key point is that she could actually silently approach Rue Hui's study. This is too dangerous. I have to kill her quickly. Thinking of this, Bunnyball's eyes couldn't help but emit a killing intent. But Ayam waved her hand and laughed. Don't you want to fight? I advise you not to do anything rash, because it's very dangerous. Before Ayam could finish her words, Bunnyball's figure turned into a stream of light and instantly appeared behind her. Guardian Inner Technique. Sacrificial Blade. 3 fingers formed a triangle, and like a sharp whip, he whipped towards Ayam's slender neck, as if he wanted to punch a hole in there. Bunnyball's speed could be said to be unparalleled in the world today. The sacrificial blade, at such a high speed, could even pierce through a steel plate. It could be said to be instant death. Aya. There's no other way. But seeing that the ancient ninja's killing move was about to hit her, Ayam only smirked and casually grabbed towards that side. Grab? Using your hand to grab my sacrificial blade? In a flash, Bunnyball was first startled, but his gaze turned to shock in the next moment. The other slender arm actually grabbed Bunnyball's wrist at an even faster speed. She grabbed his wrist that was swinging at a speed that surpassed the speed of sound, and grabbed it right on the spot. Gotcha. Immediately after, Bunnyball's sleeve exploded, as if it had been blown apart, and his wrist, elbow, shoulder, and other joints also emitted a strong explosive sound. At the same time he swung his arm to use sacrificial blade, his wrist was suddenly grabbed, causing Bunnyball's strength to return to his body. His arm was crippled. I told you not to mess around. Seeing Bunnyball holding his almost crippled wrist and retreating a few meters back with cold sweat flowing down his forehead, Ayam couldn't help but laugh. You are not my opponent. Besides, I don't have any ill intentions. Without a doubt, Ayam's words came from the bottom of her heart. Bunnyball being able to stand straight like this was the most direct reflection of her lack of ill intentions. Now that her key openness had reached 999%, how strong is this monstrous Ayam? Coupled with her LV5 physique, she has already reached a realm that no one has ever reached before. Even Bunnyball was unable to withstand a single blow from her. Seeing that Ayam's strength far exceeded his imagination, Bunnyball took a deep breath and took out a few long needles, intending to try and fight her to the death. As long as the long needles were inserted into a few special parts, they would be able to activate their guardian ninja's ultimate skill, Death Meridian. Through this special acupuncture, Bunnyball could release all the potential in his body, bringing about a huge increase in strength. Although the outcome would definitely be death, at the very least, he would have to bring Ayam down to hell with him. Bunnyball, stop. She indeed has no ill intentions. But just as Bunnyball was preparing to fight Ayam to the death, a stern voice interrupted his actions. It was Rue Hui. Rue Hui slowly stood up, walked out from behind the desk, and walked towards Ayam's direction. Seeing this scene, Bunnyball hurriedly turned pale with fright and blocked in front of her. Rue Hui-sama, don't get close to her, it's dangerous. It's okay, if she wanted to kill me, she would have already done so. You can't stop her. Hearing Rue Hui-sama's words, Bunnyball was speechless. Indeed, with the strength that Ayam displayed in that instant, if she really wanted to kill Rue Hui, even if Bunnyball activated ultimate skill, Death Meridian, he still wouldn't be able to stop her. Now that Rue Hui was still alive, it meant that Ayam really didn't come to fight. Not to mention that she didn't even kill the guardian ninja outside the door. She only knocked him out and made him fall to the ground. From these signs, Ayam really didn't mean to start a massacre here. She really wanted to talk to Rue Hui. Just like this, Rue Hui came in front of Ayam and looked at this woman that she hadn't seen for a long time. In Rue Hui's view, Ayam seemed to have changed a lot. Although she was still the monster that killed without blinking, She seemed to have matured a lot, compared to the feeling of showing off before. She seemed to be more restrained. Without a doubt, this Ayam was more terrifying than before. But Rui Hui liked her even more. "Didn't you come to drink tea with me? Let's go to the tea room to talk." "That's right, lead the way." Seeing that Rui Hui finally understood her meaning, Ayam also smiled and followed behind her. The two women walked side by side to the small tea room not far away. After arriving at the small tea room, Rui Hui knelt in front of the tea table in a dignified manner, reached out her slender white hand to pick up the tea set, and started to make tea for Ayam from boiling water. Rui Hui was well versed in the art of tea ceremony. Her every move looked quite elegant. Her hands swept across the tea table, teapot, and other places in a continuous manner, as if she was performing a graceful and agile performance. In this leisurely morning, seeing such a nemesis sitting in front of her making tea for Ayam was quite a wonderful experience. At the same time, it made her feel quite relaxed. After a while, the small tea room was filled with a faint tea fragrance. A faint mist rose from the table, with a familiar fragrance. "This smell it seems a bit familiar?" When she smelled this familiar tea fragrance, Ayam, who was sitting cross-legged without any manners, couldn't help but sniff. "This is gold osmanthus king tea, made from the flower stalk of a gold osmanthus tree." Gold osmanthus tree, speaking of which, there were many gold osmanthus trees by the lake we stayed at before. So you still remember. After hearing Ayam mention this matter, Rui Hui poured tea for her and sighed slightly. What happened by the lake back then could be said to be one of Rui Hui's greatest regrets. Rui Hui was partly responsible for not being able to lead Ayam back to the right path, and watching this child walk step by step until today. But that was already in the past, and people couldn't always be immersed in memories. So Rui Hui took a sip of tea and asked lightly, "Speak, what are you here for?" "Well, if I say that I'm here to cooperate with you, would you believe me?" "Yes, but whether I'll agree or not is another matter." From Rui Hui's perspective, she was still the leader of the Kamiyoshi tribe. If she were to wallow in the mire with Ayam, it would be two. Don't be in a hurry to reject. How about you listen to my conditions first? Conditions? It's nothing more than helping my Kamiyoshi tribe rise to the top. What other conditions can you give me? That's hard to say. For example, I can cure your terminal illness, and I can also let your daughter live, so that she doesn't have to be the vegetarian king anymore, and can live as a free person. In the small tea room filled with mist, Ayam said in a joking tone, but every word fell into Rui Hui's heart. What? At this moment, Rui Hui couldn't help but take a deep breath. After all, Ayam's conditions were really too targeted. It was aimed at Rui Hui's greatest weakness. To put it bluntly, what was Rui Hui most concerned about? The first was her daughter, and the second was herself. As for other things, they could be put aside, especially the future of the Kamiyoshi tribe. It had nothing to do with her. And Ayam's conditions were to save her life first, and then save her daughter's future. This. Who wouldn't be moved by this? After a moment, Rui Hui still shook her head and said, "It sounds very tempting, but you have to be able to do it." Before Rui Hui's voice fell, Ayam took out a translucent pearl from nowhere, and it emitted a rich medicinal fragrance, and handed it to Rui Hui. Chapter 384. What? What is this? A pill? When she saw the small pill, Rui Hui couldn't help laughing out of anger. She sneered, "Are you a fool, or do you think I'm a fool? Just this thing? Can it cure my disease?" Naturally, Rui Hui was well aware of just how severe her own Kanzaki family's hereditary disease was. Something that could not be treated by modern medicine could be cured by a small pill. That would be a miracle. What's more, this medicine was given by her enemy. Rui Hui couldn't even take it directly. Who knew what messy ingredients were in the medicine given by Ayam? After seeing the expression on Rui Hui's face, Ayam naturally knew what she was thinking. However, Yongji wasn't in a hurry. Instead, she smiled and said, "Believe it or not, I'll leave the medicine here. If you want to eat it, then eat it. If you don't want to eat it, then throw it away." After that, Iam stood up and walked out without hesitation. First of all, the Hooligan 100 Immortals pill that Iam gave to Rui Hui could indeed cure her disease. There was no doubt about that. But of course, Rui Hui wouldn't believe her at the moment, and Iam didn't mean to force her to believe. She just left the small tea room, silently, and left the Kamiyoshi Imperial Garden with the roar of a helicopter, leaving Rui Hui sitting alone. Left? She just left? After receiving the message from the guardian ninja Rucky, who was guarding outside. Rui Hui couldn't believe her eyes. Originally, Rui Hui thought that Iam first put forward the conditions and then took out the pill. After that, she must have some other means to deceive her. However, Yongji did the opposite. She actually left behind the Rogue's 100 Immortal pill and left. She had no intention of explaining it all. After Iam left, Rui Hui looked at the small round pill in her hand and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Something was wrong. Something was wrong. Something was wrong at all. In Rui Hui's opinion, this situation was completely wrong. It could be said that she didn't even know from which angle to start thinking about it. Did Iam really come here to cooperate with her? It should be. After all, Iam's most well-known partner was Ruehue Kanzaki, not the Kamiyoshi clan. Basically, she only valued Ruehue and wasn't interested in anyone else. As for Iam's conditions, it was impossible for them not to be tempted. Ruehue's terminal illness and Colored Glaze's future. The mother and daughter's biggest pain point at the moment was to kill two birds with one stone, and even hit the bullseye. To put it bluntly, the rest of Ruehue's life was to fight for the future of Colored Glaze. She had given up on everything else. However, Iam's conditions gave Ruehui a glimmer of hope. It gave her a glimmer of hope that she couldn't believe. Speaking of which, this pill smells so good. Thinking of this, Ruehui carefully extended her delicate nose and took a whiff of the pill's fragrance. All of a sudden, she felt a strange fragrance enter her nostrils. It was as if her whole body became extremely comfortable, and her originally tired body became much more relaxed. Expensive medicine. Without a doubt, this was the most expensive medicine that Ruehui had ever seen in her life. However, such an expensive medicine was something that Tenmu Iam sent over. No matter how curious Ruehui was, she couldn't just eat this thing directly. That would be too stupid. Ryuki. Yes. Following Ruehui's order, the female ninja who was responsible for guarding her quickly knelt down on one knee in front of her master. Take this thing to the Research Institute and analyze its composition, but don't damage it too much. After handing the Hooligan's 100 Immortal pill to Ryuki, Ruehui couldn't help but add such a reminder. Although Ruehui didn't quite believe that the medicine that Yongji sent over was really the elixir that could cure her terminal illness, she still subconsciously held a glimmer of hope. If the test showed that there was really no poison in the medicine, Ruehui might give it a try. Just take it as a gamble? I'm crazy. I can't believe I have such an idea. Looking at the direction where Ryuki left, Ruehui couldn't help but sigh slightly. It was fine if a person was always pure of heart and few desires, but as long as there was desire and greed, then the heart would be like a torn rag that could never be closed. The current Ruehui was in such a state of desire and greed. Previously, she only knew that she would die soon, so she had no desire. But after having a chat with Iam and leaving the pill, Ruehui's heart that was as calm as stagnant water was suddenly stirred up again. Of course, this change was also completely within Iam's expectations. When she was flying in the air on the subjugation of the world helicopter, the big boss of the Heavenly Eye Group couldn't help but laugh out loud, because she clearly knew that the dignified goddess-like Lord of Kamikaze had already been torn open by her attack. Not long after, when Ruehui tested that the pill was full of ingredients that modern science couldn't identify, this hole would instantly become a huge crack and swallow her whole. Ruehui. You can't run away. We are destined to work together to turn this world upside down. Just as Ayam was thinking this, the pilot in front turned around and asked cautiously, Master Ayam, are we returning to the unrestrained sky tower now? Well, although there are still some things to do, let's wait until night. Looking at the rising sun in the distance, Ayam realized that she didn't sleep for almost the whole night. So what she needed to do now was to go home and get some beauty sleep, and when she was full of energy, she would visit another target. Yes, another target. Another unlucky person who became Ayam's target after her rebirth, or rather, a lucky person. Not long after, Ayam returned to the unrestrained sky tower and fell asleep on the bed. On the other side, in the Kamishiro courtyard, a young plumber who was sweating all over, as if he had just finished fixing the pipes, cursed and swore as he left the door. Really? Isn't it just a broken statue? Why do you have to polish it so neatly? This young plumber who left the Kamishiro courtyard was naturally the evil main character who had just entered the game not long ago, Ryudo Kiryu. Now he was still in the period where he had just made an oath with a colored glaze, then picked up a stone and drew a cross on the statue of Heavenly Enchantress, and then polished it. After that, Ryudo drove to Kamishiro in the car of Kawasaki and Kawasaki. On the way, he was thinking about how to deal with the traitor Sakata. But now that old man Bunkomaru owes me a favor. If I use this favor well, I should be able to solve this mess. Well, no problem. I'm the main character. This is nothing. Thinking of this, Ryudo's mouth raised a smug smile, and it looked quite like the descending of the Dragon King. The situation continued to develop as smoothly as the previous time. Ryudo returned to the Rulon Group headquarters, met consultant Fujiki, and then sneaked out of the headquarters to find Sakata. He also pulled Bunkomaru and Yamamoto to sneak into Sakata's mansion. On the surface, Ryudo's plan seemed to be fine. However, what he never expected was that just as he slipped out of the headquarters, an unexpected figure appeared at the gate of the Rulon Group headquarters. I'll stop here, Mr. Akima. Please help yourself. After ordering his subordinates to open the door, the head of the search department, Lin Hua, said to the man next to him while smoking, Thank you. After getting out of the car, the man who had just left the nesting duck prison took a deep breath and walked toward the mansion in front of him. For everyone, the return of a leader of the Rulon Group was an unexpected event. So when Akima led Fujiki and a group of brothers into Sakata's base, Ryudo, who was about to throw Sakata down from the second floor, was stunned. What's going on? Am I seeing things? When they saw Akima appear, everyone's eyes almost popped out. What's going on? Isn't the leader of the Rulon Group in the nesting duck prison? There are still 30 years left in the sentence. How did he get out? But no matter what, Akima appeared in front of everyone alive. The moment Sakata saw his boss, he was so scared that he almost peed his pants on the spot. If it weren't for Ryudo's quick hands that quickly threw him down, Ryudo's clothes would be gone. Sakata, it seems that I was wrong about you. Akima looked at the traitor of the Rulon Group on the ground, shook his head slightly, and said in a heavy tone. In this way, a storm that should have had a huge impact came to an end with Ryudo's sneak attack and Akima's sudden return. After that, Ryudo learned that the reason why Akima was able to get out of prison early was that the search department found strong evidence to prove Akima's innocence, so he was quickly paroled. In Ima's words, he only needed to go to the court a few more times to go through the procedures, and he would be a free man. In the future, he would no longer need to sit in prison every day. He could go to the KTV and sing to his heart's content. Ryudo was naturally very happy about his physics dad's release from prison, but he also felt extremely confused at the same time. What the? Is this really the game I'm familiar with? That night, when Ryudo, his dad, Fujiki, and others drank some wine to celebrate, and then walked toward his room, he kept thinking about this serious problem in his mind. In the red photo album too, no survivors that Long Do knew of, it was impossible for such a scene to appear. In fact, until the end of the game, Kiryu Akima was still in prison and didn't appear at all. If Ryudo did something that affected the development of history, then this impact was a bit too fast. Besides, he didn't do anything special, right? I can't figure it out. I really can't figure it out. Voila. But even if he couldn't figure it out, Ryudo still opened the door and returned to his room, ready to rest on the bed. "You're back. Quickly close the door and sit down." However, when Ryudo entered the room, the peerless beauty sitting on the bed said to him with a smile, "Oh, I'm going." Before he finished speaking, Ryudo's body suddenly trembled, and at the same time, his whole body was fixed on the spot like a mouse being stared at by a cat. First of all, this was Ryudo Kiryo's room, so naturally, there would be no woman in it. Secondly, this woman sitting on Ryudo's bed with peerless beauty and the temperament of a witch was a character that should never appear here. This is not Tion. Tenmu I am. Ryudo played the game before, and he remembered the appearance of every character in the game very clearly. But even if he didn't remember it very clearly, it wasn't difficult to see that the woman sitting on his bed was the final demon king in the game. Am I crazy? Or is there something wrong with this world? If there was something more difficult to understand than Akima's sudden release from prison, it was the scene of the great demon king suddenly appearing in his room. Are you kidding me? The game just started. And as soon as I returned to my room to prepare for the next day, I found the final demon king in my room waiting for me? This is simply impossible. It doesn't conform to the script, nor does it conform to logic. If this strange situation happened in the game, the only explanation would be that there was a huge bug, and it was a huge bug that was enough to kill the programmer. Thinking of this, Ryudo's expression suddenly became very interesting. He stood at the door of his room, as if he was ready to turn and run at any time, but he didn't dare to run, because Ryudo knew how powerful Ayam was. Since this woman suddenly appeared in his room, it was absolutely impossible for her to leave him room to escape. At this time, the uneasy expression on Ryudo's face obviously made Ayam very happy. So she hooked her finger at the boy, smiled and said, "What are you waiting for? Come here and talk." Yes. Although he didn't know why Ayam appeared here, Ryudo could only follow her instructions. After all, for the current Ryudo, he simply didn't have the capital to fight against Ayam, the great demon king, so he could only choose to obey for the time being. This girl called me over. She won't directly kill me, right? But fortunately, I still have some money. If I die, I can revive and run. Ryudo thought in his heart as he walked towards the bed. However, what Ryudo didn't expect was that the moment he approached the bed, a slender jade arm quickly stretched out and hooked his body onto the bed like a fallen leaf. Chirp. Before Ryudo could react to what happened, a delicate lip fell on his lips. That feeling was really exhilarating. Chapter 385. For Ryudo, who was a transmigrator, it was normal for him to know all the character traits and relevant information in the game. But Ayam's move was something he never expected. Feeling the seductive touch from the cherry lips, smelling the deadly sweetness like poppy in his nose, his eyes were also looking at the pair of eyes of the abyss that was close at hand. This feeling, for Ryudo, who was still a little virgin, was simply too *king exciting. It can't be. The great demon in the game, Tenmu Ayam, is kissing me? Just as he realized what was happening, Ryudo almost fainted on the spot. Something's wrong. I must be dreaming, or something's wrong with this world. Although he thought so in his heart, the soft touch on his body repeatedly reminded him that this was reality. After Ayam kissed for a few minutes, she finally let go of Ryudo. Looking at the young man's blushing face on the bed, she revealed a joyful smile. Ha. For a moment, Ayam's heart was overjoyed. After all, compared to the Ryudo in the last timeline, the current Ryudo was as weak as a newborn baby. But this is how it should be. Ayam likes this Ryudo. Because the Ryudo in this timeline was still in the beginner stage, it was also the best opportunity for Ayam to take him under her command. Without a doubt, Ayam likes Ryudo. This kind of like is a woman's love for a man. What's more, this young man that the Demon King likes is still in the beginning stage of growth. Whether it is physically or mentally, there is still a lot of room for growth. In other words, the current Ayam can freely cultivate him into her ideal state. This plan is called Ryudo Kiryo Cultivation Plan, or Ryudo Kiryo Sky Demon Plan. At this time, the name of the plan appeared in Ayam's mind, and her gaze towards Ryudo became more direct. At this time, a very strange scene formed on the bed in Ryudo's room. Ryudo was lying on the bed like a little girl with a red face, and Ayam was lying on her side beside him, smiling as she reached out to touch the young man's cheek. If only looking at the appearance, lying on the bed with such a great beauty, it was a scene that could instantly kill all men, the kind that almost made people vomit blood on the spot. But after Ryudo came back to his senses, his eyes became more and more panicked. Something's not right. I didn't accidentally stumble into the game's hidden line, did I? Just because I messed up the course of history? According to Ryudo's knowledge, the game Red Album 2, no survivors originally had two lines, the open line and the hidden line, or called the justice line and the evil line. The justice line was easy to understand. The protagonist basically chose a female protagonist to develop a relationship with her. In the end, he either killed Ayam or reconciled with his family, and then lived a shameless life with the female protagonist of this line, and then the whole story would be over. This line was complicated, but the core was similar. It was just divided into three parts: color glaze, Yunyan, and Dunya. In the end, it couldn't be separated from the justice line. However, the evil line in the game was a hidden route. The prerequisites were to clear each of the three female leads' routes once before it could be unlocked. There were many complicated options to follow, and many players would not even be able to clear it without looking up the strategy guide. In the evil line, the female protagonist position was occupied by the final boss of the justice line, Ayam, and together with the bed-warming winter flower, they formed the evil female protagonist duo. With such a female protagonist, the evil line's content was naturally particularly evil. It was more or less about the protagonist and Ayam destroying the world, and in the end, the two of them became the Adam and Eve of the new world. How to describe it? Although the evil line's content wasn't particularly bad in Ryudo's eyes, he still couldn't understand why he inexplicably entered this line. Why? I clearly didn't clear the color glaze, Yunyan, and Dunya's lines. How did I directly enter the hidden line? Forget it. Since I'm already here, I'll just take it as it comes. But now, Ayam seems to have taken a liking to me. Then what should I do? Gulp, what should I do? Thinking of this, Ryudo turned his head to look at the delicate body lying on the bed. Especially when he happened to see Ayam's seductive and broad chest, he couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. In this world, there was no man who could resist the charm of this woman, unless the man had some kind of biological defect. Especially when lying on the same bed with her, even Lu Xiaohui couldn't help but turn into Shimanqing, and Shimanqing would directly turn into a chihuahua. How is it? Are you infatuated with me? Just when Ryudo was immersed in the beauty of the great demon queen, Ayam even moved closer to him and reached out to hug the young man in her arms. At this moment, Ryudo suddenly remembered a very ordinary bottle of something, facial cleanser. Facial cleanser was an essential daily product for every man. It was white, soft, and smooth, and it felt great when applied on the face. It could make the skin full of vitality and make the person soar into the sky. But even so, Ryudo still struggled to raise his head and asked in confusion, "That Ayam-sama? Why did you come to find me today? I have taken a liking to you, and I want to make you my man. It's that simple." In response to Ryudo's very straightforward question, Ayam also used very straightforward words to reply. "You actually took a liking to me so quickly. Could this be the so-called protagonist aura?" Suddenly, Ryudo smiled stiffly, but he immediately recovered and asked again, "Ayam-sama, you mean you want me to follow you in the future? Don't make it sound so bad." Hearing this, Yongji shook her head and said with a smile, "Since I've taken a fancy to you, then you're the male owner of the Heavenly Eye Group. How can you say that you're following me?" This woman, sure enough, her brain circuit was completely different from ordinary people. Speaking of which, today was actually the first time Ryudo and Ayam met, but this woman directly said that she wanted him to be her male owner. no matter how much they liked each other. This progress was too fast. If it was another woman, Ryudo might have thought that she was joking. But Ayam was serious. She was undoubtedly serious. Ryudo only thought that her brain circuit was special, and the way she thought was different from others. But he would never have thought that Ayam was also a transmigrator and had had many interactions with him in the later timeline. In the previous timeline, Ayam was one step behind and did not get what she wanted. So in this timeline, she wanted to get what she wanted no matter what. But because he knew that this woman's brain was not very normal, Ryudo could not help but ask, Sama, what do you want me to do with you? Rule the world? Rule the world. That's not bad. But before that, the first task is to destroy this rotten old world. When mentioning her goal, Ayam's tone became particularly proud, as if she was introducing something amazing. Why destroy the world? This question was actually very simple. It was nothing more than a game. In Ayam's mind, she saw this world as an amusement park, and tearing down the old amusement park and building a new one according to her preferences. Wasn't this a very normal thing? Of course, Ryudo did not have any objections to this extremely special game. After all, he was not from this world. Whether most of the residents died or not, whether Japan perished or not, it had nothing to do with him. On the contrary, he was happy to see it. But Ryudo still had a few people he cared about, such as the three heroines. Although Ryudo was now walking the evil line, and it was estimated that it would be difficult to have any intersection with the three heroines, he still didn't want to see Colored Glaze and others die in the hands of Ayam. He still hoped to save them. So Ryudo tentatively asked Ayam-sama, in the process of destroying the world, if I want to protect a few people. Okay, whatever. As long as it doesn't affect the overall situation, you can protect tens of thousands of people if you want. Ayam naturally wouldn't care about these trivial matters, but she casually agreed to Ryudo's request. Phew, great, now it's much easier. When he thought that he could save the lives of Colored Glaze and others, Ryudo also felt a lot more relaxed. He no longer had to worry about dragging the three heroines into the water when he followed Ayam. Now that he was relaxed, he also began to think about the benefits of walking the evil line, compared to the justice line, where one's hands were tied and one had to think about this and that. The evil line was basically killing all the way, and the degree of hatred was maxed out. It was simple and violent. Therefore, if only from the perspective of a player, playing the evil line was actually much more enjoyable. After all, the great Demon King had become someone to sleep with, and she even gave him such a big dowry as the Heavenly Eye Group. It was simply a king at the start of the game, and he was invincible when he went out. Most importantly, he could have many children with Ayam in the future. At the thought of this, Ryudo couldn't help but feel a little itchy. It couldn't be helped. Who asked Ayam to be so beautiful? That kind of beauty and temperament were completely on the level of a witch, and people were willing to fall for her. I've decided. I'm going to walk the evil line, and I'm going to become a great Demon King. Of course, it was useless for Ryudo to not make the decision, since the decision was not up to him anyway. At this time, Ryudo could be said to have no room to resist in front of Ayam. If he didn't agree, Ayam could easily kill him and leave him with nothing. Why torture himself like this? Couldn't he just agree obediently? Just like that, Ryudo, who had accepted his fate, held Ayam's delicate white hand and gently kissed the back of it. As you wish, my queen, from today onwards, we are on the same side. In the young master's room of the Rulon Group's headquarters, the curtains of a show of collusion slowly opened. Ayam was obviously very satisfied with Ryudo's understanding of the situation, so she smiled and said, "Since you've agreed, then come back with me tonight." "Ah, go back. Go back where?" "Back to our home, the unrestrained Sky Tower." This is too fast. Although he had agreed to collude with Ayam, Ryudo did not expect this woman to want to pack him up and go home tonight. Judging from Young-ji's actions just now, Longdo didn't even need to think to know what would happen if she brought him back tonight. It would definitely be cough cough, cough cough cough, cough 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 cough. What a joke. I, Ryudo Kiryu, am not such a casual person. However, just as Ryudo was about to find an excuse to refuse, Ayam smiled and kissed him on the cheek, and whispered in his ear, "Don't you want to be with me? Big sister can teach you a lot of things, the kind that can last until morning." Amit ba good, good. If Long Do could still speak at this moment, he would probably say, "Which, eat this old sun stick." But unfortunately, this inexperienced evil protagonist could not resist the temptation of Bronze Skin Supreme and Iron Bone Supreme. In the end, he was defeated and was brought back to the unrestrained Sky Tower by Ayam. That night, Ryudo's state of mind changed like this. "Your Majesty, you are amazing. Your Majesty, this is an unforgettable night. Your Majesty, don't you feel tired? Your Majesty, I think I can't take it anymore. Your Majesty the Queen, please spare me. Your Majesty, yen percent hashtag percent asterisk asterisk. Percent yen hashtag at dash." When Ayam finally fell asleep at dawn, Ryudo felt that he was about to become a dry corpse. If he did not quickly buy a bunch of medicine from the Krypton Gold Shop to save his life, he might have died on the bed on the spot. And this result was even after Ryudo bought the physique, a tribute in advance. Before doing the last step, Ayam specially gave Ryudo 1 billion as a maintenance fee, raising Ryudo's physique to LV5 physique, Extreme Superman. If it was not for this superhuman level of physique, Ayam might have really taken this little virgin's life. So this kind of thing is so scary. Looking at the woman who was using his arm as a pillow, lying on top of it and sleeping soundly, Ryudo could not help but have a great fear of her peerless beauty. But it was useless to say anything now. The sword was already back in the scabbard, and the blade was almost ground into a needle by the iron pestle of the scabbard. Following this, Ryudo could only work hard to improve his self-cultivation, so as to avoid dying on the bed one day. That would be too embarrassing. However, just as the two people in the unrestrained Sky Tower were happily enjoying the genuine friendship of life and death, on the other side of the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, a figure was scratching her ears and scratching her cheeks as she pondered. This woman, who was wearing a dignified kimono and sitting in front of a desk, was the leader of the Kamiyoshi clan that Ayam had greeted during the day, Kamishiro Ruihue. At this moment, there was a piece of paper in front of Ruihue, but there were a few big words written on the paper. "My daughter, colored glaze." However, after she finished writing the first line, Ruihue didn't know how to write the rest of the content. After all, she did not know how to explain to her daughter that she was going to eat the medicine sent by Ayam. If that was the case, Colored Glaze would definitely think that her mother's brain was fried. Chapter 386. This morning, Ruihue received the Hooligan 100 Immortals pill from Ayam and immediately sent it for testing. The Kamiyoshi network in Tokyo was complicated, and there were many professional testing agencies that knew about it. There was almost no possibility that they couldn't detect the composition of the medicine. However, this situation really happened. After the analysis of 3 world-class testing agencies, they came to a unified conclusion that this small pill probably came from Mars. When she saw the 3 almost identical reports, Ruihue was speechless and even couldn't believe her eyes. But this was to be expected. After all, the medicine sent by the system was indeed no different from Mars. It was pure alien technology. How could modern technology detect the composition? But the most professional testing agency couldn't detect the composition of the medicine. From a certain point of view, this was a great thing. Because at least one thing was known: the effect of this pill was beyond the scope of modern pharmacology. A medicine beyond the scope of modern pharmacology. There were only 2 results after eating this kind of thing. The first was to die inexplicably, and the second was to recover inexplicably. Ruihue herself was terminally ill. Her terminal illness was also beyond the scope of modern medicine. In the present, it could be described as magic or mystery. To fight against magic, you could only use magic. To kill mystery, you also had to rely on mystery. So after finding out that the medicine given by Ayam couldn't detect the composition, Rue Hui felt that the probability of this medicine being able to cure her increased a lot. In this case, Rue Hui couldn't help but seriously consider whether to take this strange pill. There was no doubt that this was a very risky move. After all, the person who sent this medicine was the boss of the Tenmu group, the most vicious and evil woman in the world. If someone told Rue Hui before that she would consider whether to take the medicine sent by Iam, she would definitely think that person was crazy. But after today's contact, Rue Hui found that Iam seemed to have changed. The woman's temperament was still chaotic, still full of malice. But in the chaos and malice, she actually exuded a sweet aura, unique to a girl in love. This made Rue Hui feel very confused. Tenmu Iam, that woman, actually gave off the feeling of a young girl in love. Is there something wrong with me? Or is there something wrong with this world? Rue Hui didn't know, and she didn't want to know for now. The only thing she wanted to know now was what to write in her suicide note. That's right, the Kanzai Imperial Garden was currently shrouded in darkness. Rue Hui sat alone in front of the desk, thinking about how to write a suicide note to her daughter. The reason why she wrote a suicide note was because Rue Hui felt that she might die. The reason why she felt that she would die was because Rue Hui intended to take the pill. The reason why Rue Hui took the pill was because she wanted to continue living in this world. The above few sentences sounded somewhat funny, but the reality was as such. If Rue Hui continues like this, she will definitely die of a terminal illness. If she didn't want to die, only Iam's medicine could save her. However, taking the medicine might also kill her. Therefore, this was a gamble with a 50% chance of success. If he won the bet, he would be able to survive. If he lost the bet, he would immediately die. Phew, forget it. It's not my style to be hesitant. I'll just eat it. After casually writing her suicide note and telling her what to do after her death, Rue Hui picked up the glass of water on the desk next to her and swallowed the special-looking pill with a gulp of water. Almost at the instant she took the pill, the master of Kamiyoshi's body suddenly trembled, and her entire body fell backward. Ugh, ugh, what's going on? Why is my body so hot? It's like there's a fire burning in my stomach. The moment she fell to the ground, Rue Hui felt that her body was shockingly hot. The terrifying heat caused her body to be unable to move, as if she was a lamb being roasted over a charcoal fire. Because Rue Hui intended to gamble with her life this time, she had already ordered everyone to leave the study, including Rucky and the other guardian ninjas who were her personal bodyguards. So when Rue Hui fell to the ground with her body burning hot, no one could save her. She could only lie on the floor with resignation, holding the suicide note that she left for her daughter in her hand. I'm going to die. Am I going to die? In a daze, Rue Hui couldn't help but think so. Legend has it that before a person died, the trajectory of their past life would flash through their eyes. This was the so-called carousel lamp. And Rue Hui also seemed to vaguely see her past, seeing her life from the Kanagi family's young mistress to the house king, and then to the Kanagi family's master. Ah, what a boring life. After reviewing her life, Rue Hui couldn't help but think so. If there's a next life, I must live more easily, more freely, and at least live for myself, not for others. Rue Hui couldn't help but have such a thought before she finally fainted. However, by the time she realized that she wasn't dead, it was already the morning of the next day. Chirp, chirp, chirp. The morning air was particularly clear, and the crisp sound of birds could be heard from outside. Rue Hui opened her eyes on the floor and felt that her body had never felt so relaxed before. Speaking of which, the high temperature after taking the pill yesterday actually only lasted for a short period of time, and Rue Hui just happened to faint. After the torment last night, Rue Hui, who woke up, felt that her entire body had become much lighter. Am I dreaming? When Rue Hui stood in front of the mirror and saw that she looked as if she had suddenly become 10 or 20 years younger, she couldn't believe her eyes. The woman in the mirror had smooth and supple skin, and her eyes were bright and spirited. Even her hair had become darker and silkier. If it weren't for the fact that there were still traces of time in the woman's eyes, we would have thought that she had gone back in time and returned to the time when she was still a young mistress. Etsun, a Mamaheim. That guy was actually serious? Where did she get such a miraculous medicine? After understanding that her body had indeed undergone a tremendous change, we couldn't help but recall Iam's words from yesterday. If I say that I'm here to cooperate with you, would you believe me? Don't be in a hurry to reject me. How about you listen to my conditions first? For example, I can cure your incurable disease, and I can even let your daughter live, so that she doesn't have to be that damned house king anymore. If it was before today, we would definitely think that Iam was fooling her and treating her as a fool. But after personally experiencing the miraculous effects of the pill, she realized that Iam wasn't lying. She was actually sincerely looking for her to cooperate. Now that Hui's body was extremely relaxed, her incurable disease was obviously almost cured, which fully proved Iam's sincerity. Yu. At this time, after Hui finished washing up, she shouted toward the window. Before her voice died away, a graceful figure appeared in front of Lord Hui and knelt down. Yes, what are your orders? Go and prepare a helicopter and call Rabbitball. I'm going to the unrestrained sky tower. Ah, unrestrained. Unrestrained sky tower? Lord Hui, are you serious? The moment she heard this name, Ryu's body trembled slightly, because she knew very well what this destination meant. What a joke! The head of Kamiyoshi was going to the headquarters of Tenma Group. Wasn't this sending a sheep to the tiger's mouth? Don't worry. Hui nodded and smiled. Nothing will happen, but this matter can't be known to others. You know what to do, right? Yes. Stealth was originally a ninja's specialty, so Ryu naturally wouldn't mess it up. But when she personally flew the helicopter to the center of Tokyo Bay, this guardian ninja still felt very nervous. After all, in the past so many years, the Kamiyoshi and the Tenma clan were mortal enemies. But at this time, Lord Hui seemed to have a new idea, which really surprised Ryu. However, just as Hui was flying to the unrestrained sky tower in the helicopter, in the master's room on the top floor of the tower, the new master slowly opened his eyes. What's wrong with me? When Ryudo woke up, the first thing he saw was a strange ceiling. The ceiling had a pink girl's color, but there were many inexplicable graffiti, which looked very uncoordinated. Coupled with the golden-haired doll hanging from the ceiling, it was even more terrifying. Such a strange room, probably only Iam's bedroom in the world. At this time, Ryudo woke up from Iam's bed in her bedroom, and when the dragon head woke up, he also felt a light breath coming from his shoulder and the warmth hanging on half of his body. Is this the benefit of being a bad guy? Although it was dangerous, it was enjoyable. Looking at Iam sleeping on his shoulder, Ryudo swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and then felt a sense of relief. Although the battle last night made him a little worried about his future, compared to the sense of relief at this time, it was nothing. Yes, relief. When he was with Iam, Ryudo felt a real sense of relief, as if even if the sky fell, it would not fall on him. This was to be expected. After all, Iam was the biggest demon in the game, and should be Ryudo's main enemy. He needed to be constantly vigilant to not be killed by this demon. But after yesterday, the demon became the person sleeping next to him, and the biggest enemy became the biggest leg. It had to be said that when he had Iam as his leg, the feeling was not just a normal kind of good. It was good in all kinds of ways. Especially when the demon closed her eyes and lay next to him. The usual evil and chaos was replaced by a peaceful sleeping face. Ryudo really felt like he was the happiest man in the world. After all, Iam was really beautiful, and could even be said to be the most beautiful woman in the world. But it was a pity that she was usually too strong and fierce, to the point that it would make people unconsciously tense up and unable to relax, and admire this great beauty's peerless appearance. But Iam was different after she fell asleep. At this time, she was like the world's most beautiful woman with a normal brain, and Ryudo could not help but stare at her flawless face for a long time. Do I look good? Just as Long Do was considering whether or not to wake her up, Yong-ji raised the corner of her mouth and asked without blinking. Well, it seemed like this girl was already awake. After being slightly shocked by Iam, Ryudo replied sincerely, "You look good, really good. There is no one in the world more beautiful than you." Glib tongue, but it makes sense, I like it. After reaching out and pulling Ryudo's head, Iam kissed him on the cheek, then stood up and put on her clothes and socks. A beauty changing clothes was a beautiful scene in the world, not to mention such a peerless beauty with a flawless appearance and figure. So when Iam picked up a pair of black lace stockings and was about to put them on, Ryudo could not help but almost go crazy and wanted to die again. No, no, no. I have to control myself, or I will die on top of her sooner or later. Long Do couldn't help but feel a lingering fear when he recalled the feeling of dying last night. After a while, Iam changed into a relatively formal outfit. The elegant black dress she was wearing looked very solemn and serious, and her soft black hair fell to her waist, matched with the black lace stockings and high heels. Her every movement was dignified and elegant, as if she was an empress who was going to inspect the country. But according to what Ryudo knew, Iam usually would not dress so formally, unless something special happened. After tidying up her appearance, Iam reached out and patted Ryudo's chest, smiled, and said, "An old friend will come to find me in a while. You should also tidy up and come with me to see her, my dear Minister Toshiro." Just last night, Iam had already arranged Ryudo's new identity. After joining the Heavenly Eye Group, Ryudo gloriously changed from Young Master of the Rulon Group to Heavenly Eye Group, Minister of Weapons, which meant he replaced the position of Nikolai, who had been blown to smithereens. But compared to his new identity, Ryudo cared more about the identity of the old friend he was going to meet later. Lord Iam, your old friend is, although you have not seen that woman, you should be quite familiar with her. After all, you just came out of her house yesterday and tried to seduce her daughter. He. When she said seduce her daughter, Iam's lips curled up, and she gave Ryudo a dangerous smile. Me? Came out of her house? Seduced her daughter? Wait, could it be that old friend is... Just as Ryudo suddenly thought of that name, there was a knock on the door. Chapter 387. Lord Iam, may I come in? With a knock on the door, the familiar voice of Tokushima Kalhana entered the ears of Iam and Ryudo. Because when Ryudo succeeded as the head of the weapons department last night, Iam summoned back the head of the guards department Kalhana, the head of the pharmacy department Yomi, and the head of the secret department Heavy Fire. It had to be said that when he saw these three bosses in the game standing beside him and becoming his colleagues last night, Ryudo felt quite strange. Although Yomi and Heavy Fire were a little puzzled by the sudden appearance of this young man who replaced Nicola's position, these colleagues also expressed friendliness to Ryudo on the surface, except for Kalhana. Kalhana didn't rush back to the investigation department today to be her own undercover chief. Instead, she asked for leave and lived in the unrestrained Sky Tower. In Ryudo's view, the reason why Kalhana deliberately lived here was most likely because of him. During the inauguration ceremony last night, Kalhana had been staring at Ryudo with a vicious gaze. Her gaze was as if she wanted to poke a hole in him. Although it was the first time Kalhana saw the young master of the Rulon Group, Ryudo could understand where Kalhana's resentment against him began. After all, from the situation he saw in Red Album 2, no one survived. The head of the department had a special relationship with his boss. Ahem, it was the kind of relationship that was not known to outsiders. Kalhana was infatuated with and worshipped Iam, while Iam treated Kalhana as a pet and a toy. The relationship between the two master and servant showed a very twisted state. But there was no doubt that Kalhana's feelings for Iam were quite firm. She could even fight against the whole world for Iam. Therefore, it was not difficult to imagine what Kalhana was thinking when she found out that her master lover brought back a stinky man last night. Kill, 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 kill. Blow his head off with a gun, dismember him with a knife, send him flying with a car, flatten him with a tank, crush him with an airplane, and blast him into ashes with a missile. especially after knowing that Ayam had brought Ryudo to her room to rest last night. Lin Hannah had not slept for the entire night. She had been making Ryudo Kiryo's curse dolls, and she had made 70 to 80 of them in one night. Lin Hua's anger and jealousy were visible to the naked eye. Ayam naturally understood, but she obviously didn't care at all. After all, Ayam had always been an absolutely self-centered woman. She was too lazy to care about what Lin Hua thought of Ryudo. After hearing Lin when knocking on the door, Ayam said indifferently, "Come in." "Yes." Before she finished speaking, Lin Hua pushed the door open and walked in. However, when she saw the young man sitting on Ayam's bed, who had just changed into a uniform but looked tired, as if he had overworked himself last night, she immediately felt her blood pressure rise. Mother asterisk her. If Ayam-sama was not nearby, Lin Hua would have spat on Ryudo's face. This stinky bastard. How dare he do that with Ayam-sama? Whoa. Although she really wanted to cut Ryudo into 1,000 pieces, Lin Hua suppressed her anger and reported to Ayam-sama. The Kamiyoshi clan's helicopter has landed at the helipad. That woman, Kaneshiro Ruehue, is heading to the living room. This was because Ayam had already reminded Lin Hua and the others yesterday that Ruehue might come to visit today. Lin Hua was not surprised by the sudden visit of the Heavenly Eye Group, as archenemy. Or rather, she was too lazy to care about Ruehue now. Lin Hua's attention was mostly focused on Ryudo. It's her, Kaneshiro Ruehue. But how? Why is Madame Ruehue here? When he heard Lin Hua's words, Ryudo could not help but widen his eyes in disbelief. According to Ryudo's understanding of this world, Colored Glaze's mother, Kaneshiro Ruehue, was a very strict woman. She should be Ayam's archenemy. If Ruehue did not die early because of a terminal illness, Ayam would not have been able to do so much in the later stages of the game. Therefore, Ruehue should be the only person who could compete with Ayam. However, the only woman in this world who could compete with Ayam was sitting in the reception room of the unrestrained Sky Tower at this time. Different from Yongji's study and bedroom, which were out of tune and out of place, the reception room still looked very proper because it was used to receive some proper people. However, when Ruehue sat elegantly on the soft sofa and held the top-grade osmanthus tea brewed by the maid, although her expression was very relaxed, the two guards behind her were not the same. Looking carefully, the two guardian ninjas, Bunkamaru and Ritsuki, were standing behind their master on the left and right, vigilantly paying attention to the surrounding situation. After all, this was the nest of the Heavenly Eye Group. It was understandable for the two to be vigilant, especially after that figure appeared. Oh, Ruehue, what a rare guest. When she walked toward Ruehue with swaying steps, Ayam could not help but show a happy smile. Because from the moment Ruehue appeared here, she already knew that she had won. However, Ruehue did not first look at Ayam, this old enemy, but looked at the young man who walked behind Ayam. This young man is Rulon Group's young master, Ryudo Kiryo. With Ruehue's connections, she naturally knew that this kid kidnapped her daughter yesterday and slept in her daughter's Kamishiro courtyard for a night. Although according to Bunkamaru's report, he seemed to have done something to this kid, so he would not continue to have thoughts about Colored Glaze. But why did Ryudo appear next to Ruehue the next day? Seeing this extremely strange situation, Bunkamaru, who was behind Ruehue, almost had his eyes pop out. How is this possible? Ryudo Kiryo, he actually works for Heavenly Ayam? To be honest, although Bunkamaru confronted Ryudo for a while yesterday, he did not see that this kid actually used the same blanket as Ayam. This was too ridiculous. Although this could not be blamed on Bunkamaru, because when Ryudo confronted Bunkamaru yesterday, he really did not use the same blanket as Ayam. This blanket was temporarily used last night. At this moment, Ryudo was somewhat embarrassed when he saw Bunkamaru again. After all, yesterday he vowed in front of Bunkamaru that he liked Colored Glaze, but in the end, he got together with Ayam. Of course, compared to Bunkamaru, who almost castrated him yesterday, Ryudo's gaze was mostly focused on Madame Ruehue. After all, she was really beautiful. Although Ruehue was Colored Glaze's mother, no matter how one looked at her, he felt that she was a beautiful woman who was not even 30 years old. At this moment, she was wearing a black sleeve kimono with the Kamiyoshi family's double-leaf sunflower pattern printed on it. She looked calm and elegant without being overly gorgeous. At the same time, the collar and cuffs were inlaid with golden threads, adding a faint sense of luxury. This dignified appearance, coupled with her thick black hair that was tied up high with a jade hairpin, could be said to be exuding a mature feminine charm. Moreover, because Ruehue had consumed the Hooligan 100 Immortal Pill, she looked even younger. Her skin was so tender that when she stood next to Colored Glaze, they looked like a pair of sisters. This Ruehue was not inferior to Ayam, who was sitting opposite her. They were both peerless beauties, the kind that could cause the downfall of a city. Oh, this feeling, am I in heaven? At this time, Ayam was sitting on the sofa beside Ryudo. Ruehue was sitting on the sofa opposite him, and Lin Hua was standing behind her. For a moment, he didn't know if he was dreaming. Otherwise, how could such a dreamlike scene appear? Although the three female leads in the original work were also beautiful, Colored Glaze, Yunyan, and Dunya were relatively young after all. They didn't have the almost overflowing feminine charm of Ayam, Ruehue, and Lin Hua. Especially the unique body fragrance and charm of mature women. It made Ryudo feel quite satisfied. Of course, he wasn't an old pervert. He was simply attracted by the three beautiful big sisters. This was a very normal thing. Just when Ryudo was unmoved on the surface, but he secretly sighed in his heart that he came to the right place. Ruehue put down the teacup in her hand and said faintly, "I didn't expect that the kidnapping of my Colored Glaze yesterday was arranged by the two of you. Your acting is really good, Ryudo-kun." Originally, after Ruehue learned about yesterday's incident, she thought that Ryudo and Rulon Group were also victims of Ayam's plot. Who knew that they were actually in the same group, which really made her a little upset. Especially when she thought that Ryudo, this little brat, actually dared to kidnap her baby daughter. Ruehue wanted to stab him twice in the head. After being ridiculed by Ruehue, Ryudo's face was a little red. After a while he murmured, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." Previously, the kidnapping of Colored Glaze wasn't actually done by Ryudo. Originally, he could have pushed the blame to Ayam, the shady business, but now the shady business was in cahoots with him. So now, Ryudo had become yellow mud that fell into his crotch. Even if it wasn't shit, no one would believe it. He had to apologize to Madame Ruehue first to avoid any more trouble. Just when Ryudo was facing Ruehue, Ayam smiled and said, "Don't hold on to him. The previous incident was my idea. At that time, we were still enemies, weren't we?" I didn't say anything. It's not my habit to bring up old scores. Besides, for the sake of the pill, let's forget about the previous incident. Of course, Ruehue deliberately came to the unrestrained Sky Tower, this time to talk about these old matters. Moreover, her daughter Colored Glaze was scared but not in danger in the end, so there was no benefit in arguing about it. Therefore, she quickly looked at Ayam, her partner. Both Ruehue and Ayam were smart people. They both knew what it meant for the two of them to sit in the guest room of the unrestrained Sky Tower to discuss this matter peacefully. Therefore, neither of them would talk about why they were sitting there. Instead, they directly discussed the next division of labor. "You want to cooperate with me? How do you want to cooperate? Do you want to occupy this country? That's too gentle of a word. How can we rebuild something that's already rotten without destroying it?" That makes sense. With Ruehue's intelligence and knowledge as a god, she naturally knew how many corpses were needed to complete the destruction and reconstruction mentioned by Ayam. Even so, Ruehue did not hesitate to reply, "That makes sense." Because the current her, after reincarnating, had decided to live only for herself and her daughter. As for other things, Ruehue would not care at all. To put it in a more extreme way, for example, if the lives of 200 million people in Japan were to be exchanged for Colored Glaze's future, Ruehue would not hesitate to do so. After all, compared to herself and her daughter, the lives of other unrelated people were worthless. This was the cold-bloodedness of a person of high status, and also the courage of a person who wanted to achieve great things. Seeing how resolute Ruehue's gaze became, Ayam could not help but nod slightly. She smiled and said, "In that case, I'll have to trouble you to take the position of Golden Heron first. Can you do that?" Ayam was naturally very familiar with the most ancient organization in Japan, the Yatsuki, which held most of the power in Japan. However, for a strange person like Ayam, who was ostracized by the traditional circle, it was difficult for her to get her forces deep into the inner circle of the Yatsuki. However, with Ruehue's cooperation, the situation was completely different. If Ruehue could replace the position of Iwasaki or Takahara Miyako, then these two strongest women in the world could completely erode the organization from the inside. At that time, most of the politicians would be assassinated and replaced, and the entire Japan would be in the hands of the two. Whether it was dismantling or destroying it, it would all be up to Ayam. After hearing Yongji's words, Ruehui didn't even think about it and replied, "No problem. Give me a week. I guarantee that I can pull those two guys down from their high horse. In a week, bring down the most powerful golden heron in Japan." When Ruehue said this, she was full of pride and did not consider the possibility of failure or delay at all. This confidence that seemed to not care about the world was also what Ayam liked the most about her. As expected, you were bound by too many boring things before, and now you are the real you. Yongji immediately smiled and nodded. At the same time, she said to Ruehui, "Since that's the case, I'll send the head of the weapons department of the Heavenly Eye Group to assist you. He's an extremely powerful monster." Head of weapons? Nikolai? Nikolai has retired and returned to his hometown to get married. The current head of weapons is him. After saying this, Ayam pointed at Ryudo next to her, and at the same time showed a sweet smile to the head of weapons. "Ah? Head of weapons. Ryudo Kiryu? Let him help me?" In an instant, Ruehue was stunned, and then turned to look at the young man that Ayam called an extremely powerful monster. At the same time, Ryudo also looked at Ruehue, and for the first time, their eyes met. Chapter 388. As for Lady Ruehui, Ryudo didn't have any thoughts about her. After all, according to his previous understanding of the plot, he shouldn't have anything to do with this woman. On one hand, she was Colored Glaze's mother and was considered an elder. On the other hand, she didn't have long to live. But an hour later, Ryudo and Ruehui were sitting in a helicopter together. In front of the cockpit, there was Rabbitball, who kept staring at him with a sour face. "What's going on? This is too awkward." When Ryudo and Ruehui sat in the back seat of the helicopter, their legs were almost touching each other. Ryudo couldn't help but gulp. His expression also became a bit strange. Why did Ryudo leave with Ruehui in a helicopter? Because this was Ayam-sama's order. From today onwards, Ryudo's job was to assist this kamikaze and help her become a golden heron in the shortest amount of time. In order to successfully accomplish this goal, Ryudo obtained a portion of the Spread the Martial Arts Mercenary Group's mobilization authority. This elite mercenary group that originally belonged to Ayam, coupled with the entire weapon department, in his hands, Ryudo now had a lot of chess pieces in his hands. Not to mention, Ryudo also received a full 5 billion mission fee. Relying on the 5 billion mission fee, Ryudo immediately increased his attribute points to a very high level. So at this time, Ryudo's personal attribute page looked like this. Name, Ryudo Kiryuage, 16 attributes, Wisdom LV4, Constitution LV5, Courage LV5, Insight LV4, Charm LV5 title, Soft Rice Man. When there is a close female around, all attributes increase by 50%, equipment, none total assets, 235 billion. Other than Wisdom and Insight that required 5 billion to level up, Constitution, Courage, and Charm were all maxed out by Ryudo. 2 days, he had only transmigrated to this world for 2 days, and his attributes had already skyrocketed. This was probably the charm of the money modifier. Of course, even though Long Do's personal attributes were already very high, the bastard title of freeloader still made him extremely unhappy. Title: Soft Rice Man, obtained after receiving more than 5 billion from a close female. When there is a close female around, all attributes will be greatly increased. How to say this? The Soft Rice Man title was indeed very powerful. The attribute increase was very obvious. But I really don't want to be a soft rice man. Long Do didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the thought of Yong-ji giving him so much maintenance fee and mission fee. On one hand, he hoped that he could become stronger through his own hard work, so that he wouldn't have to rely on a woman to survive. On the other hand, he felt that the current situation was indeed very good. Of course, he was being taken care of by the world's most beautiful woman as soon as he transmigrated. She gave him status, people, and money. With such a good rich woman, there probably wouldn't be any man in the world who would be able to resist her. However, Ryudo still had some backbone. Since he had taken so many things from Iam, he had to make some achievements as the head of the weapons department, even if he had to work together with Reihue Kaneshiro. To be honest, Ryudo was now somewhat afraid of Reihue. After all, she was one of the stricter characters in the original work. So, when he left with her on the helicopter and brought people to clean up the Kamiyoshi tribe, Ryudo obviously felt somewhat uncomfortable. Their destination this time was to go to the Kamiyoshi tribe and kill some of the people who had connections with the outside world. The Kamiyoshi tribe had many complicated factions. Many of its members were inextricably linked to Yatsuki Yukiyoshi. So, if they wanted to deal with Yatsuki Yukiyoshi, they would first have to deal with the spies in their family. Reihue had already compiled a list of spies, including her younger brother Kamishiro Yoshuki and her nephew filial piety Kaneshiro. According to what Reihue knew, this father and son pair had a deep connection with the current Yatsuki Yukiyoshi, the president of the great Japanese bank, Iwasaki Yanasuk. If Reihue wanted to deal with them, it would be best to deal with these spies as soon as possible so that they wouldn't alert the enemy. But after all, they were Reihue's own blood relatives. It wasn't appropriate for her to do it herself, so she could only let Ryudo do it for her. Just as Ryudo was thinking about how to deal with them when they arrived at the Kaneshiro Imperial Garden, Reihue opened her eyes slightly and asked in a light tone, "Ryudo-kun, can I ask you for a favor?" "Ah, Mrs. Reihue, please go ahead." After hearing Reihue's words, Ryudo was somewhat nervous, but he immediately nodded. "I heard that you seem to have publicly declared that you like colored glaze, right? That's what happened before." Ryudo Kiryu-esque character originally liked Kaneshiro colored glaze, and it was the same in the original work. Many people knew about this, so Ryudo had nothing to hide. At this time, Reihue said, "Since you are part of Iam's faction, please don't get close to colored glaze in the future. I hope that my daughter can live a simple and happy life in the future." Understood. After being warned by Mrs. Reihue, Ryudo could only nod dejectedly. Although Ryudo liked colored glaze, his current liking for her was limited to liking the game character. It hadn't reached the point of marrying no one else, or marrying no one else. Since he was now forced to choose the evil path, Ryudo naturally wouldn't have any ideas about colored glaze. After all, colored glaze and Iam couldn't coexist. It was impossible to force himself to "I want them all in this situation," so he could only accept it. Otherwise, he would most likely be chopped into 9 pieces by Iam. Reihue was obviously very satisfied with Ryudo's tactful attitude. She smiled and said, "Not bad, you are more mature than I thought. No wonder Iam entrusted you with such a heavy responsibility." "It's okay, Iam. Sama trusts me more, so I have to do well." "Iam?" After hearing Ryudo's words, Reihue inadvertently blinked. "There's something strange." Ryudo Kiryu and Tenmu Iam. There seems to be something strange between these two. According to Reihue's understanding of the members of the Heavenly Eye group, most of the capable people joined Yongji because of their admiration. So when they mentioned the boss, They all had a very respectful expression. But Ryudo was different. When he mentioned Ayam, there was almost no respect. Instead, he seemed to be very close to her. This feeling was completely different from the attitude towards a boss, a superior, but more like the attitude towards his lover. That's right, lover. In fact, Ryudo had already subconsciously regarded Ayam as such. After all, Ayam was really his woman now, and the two had completely completed the most intimate contact last night. In addition, Ayam was really good to Ryudo, giving him whatever he wanted. The human heart was made of flesh, so Ryudo would naturally treat her well in return. That feeling was more or less treating her as his lover. This subtle emotional change obviously couldn't be hidden from Ruehue's eyes. It can't be? Could it be he's Ayam's lover? Thinking of this, Ruehue carefully thought about Ayam's attitude towards Ryudo in the living room. Thinking about it carefully, it did seem to be more or less ambiguous. It didn't seem like a normal female superior and male subordinate. If that's the case, I have to build a good relationship with Ryudo-kun. Since he was able to receive Ayam's love, it meant that he must have his own outstanding qualities. And since he's Ayam's lover, I can try to use Ryudo to instill some ideas into Ayam. I'll do that. Although the current Ruehue had reached a comprehensive cooperation with Ayam, it didn't mean that Ruehue didn't have her own thoughts. Although she wouldn't backstab Ayam or drag Ayam down, she was obviously very willing to fight for her own interests and let herself have more say in this alliance. So when the two got off the helicopter and were walking towards Kamishiro Imperial Garden, Ruehue used a gentle tone to say to Ryudo-kun, you don't have to be polite here. Just treat this place as your own home. Is that so? Just as Long Do was about to smile and chat with Ruehue, who had suddenly become gentle, he saw a man hurriedly walking out of a house not far away. It was a middle-aged man who looked to be about 50 years old, but his body was still tall and straight. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle looking for prey. This is Kamishiro Yoshiyuki. Because he had played the game before, Long Do naturally recognized this man and knew who he was. The most important thing was that this man was the person Ryudo was going to deal with this time. Kaneshiro, Ruehue's brother, Kaneshiro Colored Glaze's uncle, and at the same time, he was also Kamiyoshi Scum. At this time, this Kamiyoshi Scum quickly came to Ruehue's side and asked his sister while sweating, Ruehue, where did you go so early in the morning? Why didn't you turn on your phone? I couldn't find you anywhere. You scared me to death. I'll leave it to you. Ruehue didn't answer her brother's question. Instead, she sighed and walked into the house, not even looking at Yoshiyuki. What's going on? Who's this brat? Seeing that his sister didn't even look at him for some reason, Yoshiyuki wanted to chase after her and ask her some questions. But before he could take a step forward, a hand that was like an iron pincer grabbed his neck. Although we don't have any grudges, I have to kill you. I'm sorry. At that moment, Yoshiyuki heard a young voice coming from behind him. Then there was a crisp cracking sound, and the world in his eyes tilted greatly. This is... I thud. When Ryudo let go of his hand, Kamishiro Yoshiyuki's body, whose neck had been broken, fell to the ground and lost all signs of life. After killing Yoshiyuki, Ryudo ordered the mercenaries who suddenly appeared behind him without looking back, take him away and get rid of him. Yes, the mercenaries didn't hesitate. They immediately carried Yoshiyuki's body and walked away. Perhaps they were planning to sink into the familiar Tokyo Bay. Perhaps it was because of his LV-5 courage, but Ryudo didn't feel any discomfort after killing this man. Instead, he felt a slight sense of relief. No problem. With my current ability, it's enough to deal with most situations. In this world, it's either you die or I die. I mustn't be soft-hearted. Just like this, after killing the first target, Kamishiro Yoshiyuki, Ryudo led the Conquering the World mercenaries and directly walked into the Kamishiro Imperial Garden. Under the instruction of Ryuhei, almost all the guardian ninjas, who were originally protecting the Kanzaki family members, disappeared without a trace, and the other guards were also gathered in a certain place, so that it would be convenient for Ryudo and the others to make a move. Who are you? Ah, help, help. Someone come. Please don't kill me. You can have as much money as you want. That afternoon, there was a bloody storm in the Kamishiro Imperial Garden. The group of clansmen and guards, and even the ninjas who were previously identified by Ruehue as having connections with outsiders were mercilessly slaughtered. Fresh blood dyed this land, which was originally considered very sacred, red. Occasionally, there would be waves of panic screams coming from the courtyard. Such a situation could be said to be poles apart from the usual tranquil and peaceful Kamishiro Imperial Garden. However, the current Ruehue was very satisfied with this situation. She sat alone at the tea table in her room, looking through the window at the familiar osmanthus tree, with a faint smile on her face. On the tea table, the fragrance of the tea leaves covered the faint smell of blood in the house. Not long after, there was a knock on the door of a room, and a somewhat tired voice came from outside. Madam Ruehue, I'm done here, I'll go back first. After recognizing the voice of Ryudo, Ruehue smiled and said, Don't be in a hurry to leave, come in and sit. Ah, she wants me to go in and sit? Suddenly, Ryudo was clearly confused. After all, this was Ruehue's boudoir. Wasn't it a bit inappropriate for a man like him to go in? But since she had already invited him, Ryudo didn't want to go in. So Ryudo pushed the door and walked in. He came to the tea table and sat in front of Ruehue, with his hands on his knees, looking like an obedient child. This Ryudo Kiryu was completely different from the cold-blooded killer who went on a killing spree in the Kamishiro Imperial Garden today. So much so that Ruehue couldn't help but show a funny expression. Ryudo-kun, it's been hard on you today, you, beep, beep, beep. However, just as Ruehue was about to chat with Ryudo and connect a little, a hurried voice came from Ruehue's phone. Emergency call? Ruehue didn't dare to neglect, but quickly picked up the phone, turned around, and whispered, What's the matter? Master Ruehue, Miss Colored Glaze suddenly ran back. She has already broken through the front door and is running toward your bedroom. W. What? The moment she heard that name, Ruehue couldn't help but slightly open her mouth. If it was under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be a problem for her daughter to come to her mother's bedroom. But now there was a man in the bedroom. If Colored Glaze saw Ruehue and Ryudo in the boudoir, then how could she explain this? Chapter 389. This. Colored Glaze actually came back? This was too bad. The timing was too good. Because today she sent people to clean up the Kamiyoshi group of moles. Now the family was in a bloodbath. So Ruehue really didn't want her daughter to come back at this time. After all, Colored Glaze was very smart. Even if she smelled a trace of blood at home, it would arouse her suspicion. Today's matter was too bloody and too realistic. Ruehue didn't want her daughter to be involved at all. Whether it was the internal conflict of the Kamiyoshi group, the cooperation with the Heavenly Eye group, or the various bloody things that were about to happen in the outside world. These things weren't something a student like Colored Glaze should care about. Ruehue just wanted her daughter to live happily as a normal person. But who knew that Colored Glaze seemed to have noticed something and actually hurried back home. This was troublesome. After hanging up the phone, Ruehue sighed slightly, then hurriedly said to Ryudo, Ryudo-kun, hurry up and leave. My daughter is back. Daughter. Colored Glaze. When he heard this name, Ryudo was somewhat embarrassed. After all, not long ago he righteously said that he would save Colored Glaze from the sea of bitterness. But in the end, he suddenly became the Heavenly Eye Group's hired thug. But from a certain point of view, Ryudo helped Ayam destroy this country, which could be considered as saving Colored Glaze from the sea of bitterness. When the time comes, when Japan is destroyed, Shinto will naturally be finished, and the king position of the Kamiyoshi will also disappear. At that time, Colored Glaze wouldn't have to think about being locked in the shrine after the age of 18, and could live as a normal person in the outside world. But that was off topic. The most important thing for Ryudo now was, "This is my escape route." So after nodding to Madame Rue Hui, he quickly opened the door and tried to rush out. But it was too late. Just as he opened the door halfway, he saw a familiar figure running towards him. It was Colored Glaze. It was Colored Glaze Kanzaki. She was running down the corridor at an extremely fast speed. She could run 100 meters in about 20 seconds. Although Ryudo wasn't running fast, because there was only one path outside the corridor, Colored Glaze's figure had already blocked his escape route. I can't leave through the main entrance. Seeing that the front door was blocked, Ryudo hurriedly closed the door and tried to escape from the back window. But just as he was about to open the window, Rue Hui hurriedly said, "Wait. For safety reasons, the window is sealed." After all, Rue Hui was the leader of the Kamiyoshi clan, and there were many people who wanted to take her life. Therefore, even the windows in his room were completely sealed with bulletproof glass. There was no way to open them at all. Good Lord, now it's asking for directions. Just as Ryudo was in a hurry to escape, Rue Hui hurriedly said, "Under the bed. There's a secret passage under the bed. I prepared it for emergencies to escape." Very good. Ryudo hurriedly ran under Rue Hui's bed. With a slide kick and a roll, he rolled in. Because Rue Hui's room was usually cleaned by the servants, Ryudo didn't cause any dust or noise after rolling in. Creak. Hoo hoo hoo. After a few seconds, accompanied by a slight sound and panting, Colored Glaze's figure appeared in his mother's room. Ho ho, ho ho, ho ho. Mother-sama. Now, what's going on? Why did filial piety cousin send this message to me? When Colored Glaze came in, she raised her phone and asked Rue Hui while panting. Message? Filial piety cousin? Could it be? After seeing the contents of Colored Glaze's phone, she finally understood why her daughter would barge in at this time, without saying anything. Because in the message that filial piety Kanzaki sent to Colored Glaze, there was only one simple but terrifying sentence. This sentence was, "Help. Something happened at home. Many people were killed." From the fact that the word "bay" was even typed wrongly, filial piety Kanzaki must have sent the message in a state of extreme panic. But this wasn't surprising. After all, it was true. That afternoon, Ryudo did indeed carry out an unprecedented purge of Kamiyoshi's traitors. The total number of people killed was more than 30, including Yoshiyuki and filial piety Kanzaki. In fact, not long after filial piety Kanzaki sent this message to Colored Glaze, this filial son was also dug out from the warehouse by Ryudo and had his neck broken. They should have all been thrown into Tokyo Bay by now. However, Rue Hui obviously couldn't tell Colored Glaze about this, so she could only smile and say, "Filial piety Kanzaki must be joking. You actually believe this kind of thing, who would randomly kill people at home. I'm still here, aren't I? Is that so? But on the way back, I seem to have smelled some blood." That's because the family hunted a wild deer, and the chef was preparing the venison. Really? Colored Glaze looked at her mother, who was exactly the same as usual, and asked in a puzzled tone, "Then where's filial piety Kanzaki cousin?" "I'm not too sure. He usually doesn't live at home. You know, that guy loves to play very much." Saying this, Rue Hui couldn't help but sigh, as if she felt that there was nothing she could do about her nephew. Logically speaking, there was nothing wrong with Rue Hui's way of dealing with it. Her expression was also very natural. Moreover, this Kamiyoshi Kanzaki was right, who could casually kill people in Kamiyoshi Garden, except for herself. Really? Could it really be a misunderstanding? At this time, Colored Glaze Kanzaki looked at her mother with a puzzled expression. In fact, she was almost convinced, after all, someone killing Kamiyoshi Kanzaki in Kamiyoshi Garden. This kind of thing was a bit too ridiculous. After all, in Colored Glaze's eyes, her mother was an omnipotent existence. But just as Colored Glaze's gaze swept over the small tea table not far away, her eyes slightly narrowed. On the small tea table was a full set of jade tea set. The teapot was still emitting obvious steam, and the tea in the 2 cups had not been emptied. But the problem was that Rue Hui was clearly in the room right now, So why were there 2 cups on the tea table? Even the tea in the teapot was still warm, which meant that the other person drinking tea here didn't leave for too long. Or rather, didn't leave at all? Shit. The moment Colored Glazes' gaze swept over the tea table, Rue Hui also noticed this loophole. Just now, because she hurriedly guided Ryudo Koen to leave, Rue Hui forgot to clean up his tea set. After all, Rue Hui was the owner of Kamiyoshi, and she usually didn't need to clean up the tea set herself. Usually, after drinking, she would let the servants come in to clean up. She didn't expect that because of this habit, she would let the cat out of the bag. Just now, someone was drinking tea here. After looking for a few seconds, Colored Glaze couldn't help but turn her head to ask her mother. According to Colored Glaze's knowledge, there weren't many people who could enter her mother's boudoir. It could even be said that it was very rare. And the people who could sit here and drink tea, that was even rarer. Even her daughter had never heard of it. If there were guests, Rue Hui would usually invite them to the tea room to drink tea and chat, and would not sit in the bedroom. After all, the bedroom was a very private place, and it was not suitable for entertaining ordinary guests. Usually, the people who could enter the bedroom were the few old guardian ninjas and some old servants, such as Rue Hui and the like, and Rue Hui would not drink tea with them here. Yes, it's my a friend. After being discovered by her daughter that there was someone in her bedroom, Rue Hui couldn't help but feel a headache coming on, so she could only try to cover it up. But now that Rue Hui looked like she was having a headache, Colored Glaze had other thoughts. Speaking of which, Mother seems to be completely different today. At this time, Colored Glaze carefully looked at Rue Hui's face, and seemed to have discovered something special. Although Rue Hui usually looked very dignified and elegant, virtuous and magnanimous, she was still young after all. Not only was her skin not as smooth and firm as Colored Glaze's, but she also didn't look very lively. But today, Rue Hui was different. Her skin suddenly became much better, and she was radiant and full of vitality, as if she suddenly became a few decades younger. This Rue Hui made Colored Glaze feel a little unfamiliar. She didn't feel like her mother, but more like an older sister that she hadn't seen in a long time. Why? Why did Mother suddenly become so much younger? She looked completely different now. At this moment, Colored Glaze's mind began to think carefully. Mother suddenly showed signs of becoming younger. The double teacup in the bedroom, and her flustered look right now. If she thought about it all together, she would come to a strange conclusion. This conclusion was the master of Kamiyoshi, Colored Glaze's mother, seemed to probably have a man. Although this conclusion sounded ridiculous, it was the conclusion that Colored Glaze felt was the most believable. Why did she suddenly feel so much younger, and she looked so radiant? Because, with the nourishment of love, she naturally looked different. Why was there a double teacup in the bedroom? Because someone was drinking tea with Rue Hui here, just now. Why would this matter make Rue Hui panic in front of her daughter? Because she didn't want her daughter to see her lover. Good heavens! Everything was right? For a moment, Colored Glaze couldn't help but take a deep breath, but she still nodded to her mother and said, "Mother, actually, I shouldn't interfere in your private life. No matter what, I wish you happiness." Huh? Rue Hui was stunned when she suddenly received her daughter's blessings. My private life? Wishing me a happy life? Wait, what did that mean? Because Colored Glaze's thoughts were too jumpy, Rue Hui couldn't react to what she was saying. But Rue Hui was also a rare intelligent person. She could see that her daughter knew that there was someone in her bedroom not long ago, and with the words private life and happiness just now, it didn't take long for her to understand what Colored Glaze was thinking. It can't be? Does she think that I'm hiding a man at home? The moment she understood, Rue Hui felt like she was dumbfounded. She hurriedly explained, "Wait, Colored Glaze, actually All right, Mother. This isn't something that can't be exposed. I haven't seen Father since I was young, so I won't mind you. Cough, cough. Anyway, that's it. I'll leave first." Before she finished speaking, Colored Glaze ran out like a wisp of smoke, closing the door on her way out. After all, according to Colored Glaze's deduction, her mother's lover should still be in the room. Although she didn't know where he was hiding, her sudden intrusion should have brought them quite a bit of trouble. But then again, her mother was also welcoming her own spring. This feeling was really strange. That can't be my biological father, right? When she left, Colored Glaze couldn't help but complain in her heart, but at the same time, she felt a little excited. Ever since Colored Glaze was very young, she had always been curious about how Rue Hui gave birth to her, because that man's name wasn't left behind in the Kamiyoshi family. But if Colored Glaze's father disappeared for some reason and suddenly returned after more than 10 years, then this situation made sense. Although it felt like a setting from a romance novel. Of course, Colored Glaze's thoughts were completely wishful thinking. She was a product of technology. What kind of father would she have? However, after sending Lioli off, Rue Hui, who heaved a sigh of relief, sat down on the bed and took a deep breath. Phew. Looks like that child misunderstood something. Really, why would I have a tryst with a man here? Fortunately, Ryudo Koen didn't hear it, or else it would be so awkward. Rue Hui sat on the bed and couldn't help but complain. She just happened to be in the bedroom waiting for the bloody storm outside to pass, and she just happened to brew tea. So she casually invited Ryudo into the room to have a cup of tea and chat, and to ask for information. Who knew that in Colored Glaze's eyes, it would become her having a tryst with her lover. This feeling of being caught in the act by her daughter was really embarrassing. It was the second most embarrassing thing in Rue Hui's life. And the first most embarrassing thing in her life. That would be a head suddenly popping out awkwardly from under Rue Hui's bed. Yes, a head, a young head that she just saw not long ago, popped out from under the bed and met Rue Hui's eyes at a strange angle. The person who would hide under the bed at this time was naturally Ryudo, who just left through the tunnel not long ago. But why didn't he leave through the tunnel, and instead hid under the bed to eavesdrop? Seeing Rue Hui looking at him as if she saw a ghost, Ryudo scratched his head and smiled bitterly. Sorry, I didn't mean to eavesdrop. But your tunnel door has an electronic lock. I can't open it. The door of the underground tunnel electronic lock. Until now, Rue Hui just realized that the tunnel door under her bed was designed to be activated by fingerprints because it was her personal escape route. And Ryudo wasn't her. So naturally, he couldn't open the door and could only awkwardly crawl under the bed to eavesdrop on the conversation between the mother and daughter, which included the part about private life and tryst with a man. Just kill me. The moment she understood everything, Rue Hui felt her face turn red, and she couldn't help but cover her face. Rue Hui Kamishiro, ever since I was born as the daughter of Kamiyoshi, for so many years, I have never been so embarrassed. If it wasn't for the fact that Rue Hui didn't have a system, she would have definitely shot herself in the head without hesitation. It was so embarrassing that she wanted to die. Chapter 390. What happened that day was very awkward for both Rue Hui and Ryudo. But Rue Hui was an adult after all, so she quickly recovered from the awkwardness and acted as if nothing had happened and sent Ryudo out the door. Ryudo-kun, nothing happened just now, you should know that. Before sending Ryudo off, Rue Hui showed a gentle smile and said to him in a gentle tone, "What are you talking about, Mrs. Rue Hui? I don't understand. I came here to work today, nothing else happened." Ryudo, who was already quite intelligent, was also an expert at pretending to be confused. So he immediately acted like he didn't know anything and nodded to Rue Hui. Phew. Really, I didn't expect something like this to happen. If I knew about this, she would probably laugh at me. Seeing Ryudo leave in the Ministry of War's exclusive vehicle, Rue Hui couldn't help but cover her face. Of course, her thoughts were absolutely correct. That night, when I found out about Rue Hui and her daughter's argument, she immediately rolled left and right on the bed while laughing like a little girl who hadn't grown up yet. Puffed. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Kanzaki Rue Hui. That Rue Hui, actually, her daughter thought that you had an affair with her. Ha 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 ha. Her laughter was wild and violent, making people feel like there was a level 18 typhoon in the room. Her wild laughter made Ryudo feel a bit creepy, so much so that his sitting posture on the desk not far away looked awkward. But Ryudo still tried his best to explain. It's a misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. There's really nothing special. Is that so? It's really a misunderstanding? But after hearing Ryudo's words, Ayam climbed up from the bed with a smile, came behind him, and wrapped her arms around his neck. The moment Ayam hugged him from behind, Ryudo couldn't help but gulp, but he still turned around and asked, "What else? Don't you think it's because your charm is too strong?" I don't think Rue Hui would casually invite people into her bedroom for tea. As Ayam spoke, she reached out and pinched Ryudo's face, as if she was pinching a toy. Of course, Ayam's words weren't without reason, because Ryudo's charm attribute had already reached LV5 charm, Extreme Superman. This level of charm was like magic in the eyes of ordinary people. It could easily make people like trust, worship, and other emotions. Speaking of which, Ryudo had fully experienced the effects of the charm attribute in today's work. Although he was the director of the Heavenly Eye Group's weapon department, because of his terrifying charm, all the members of the weapon department immediately trusted him. After all, this level of charm could be used indiscriminately on men and women. Even men would unconsciously have a good impression of Ryudo. Not to mention women, most people would easily fall in love with him. Therefore, Rue Hui's admiration of Ryudo was more or less influenced by his magical charm. Although it wasn't as serious as others, it wasn't to the point of falling in love with him directly. You don't seem to be jealous at all. Long Do casually pulled Young-ji into his embrace when he sensed the relaxed tone in her voice. He looked at her devastatingly beautiful face and asked, "What about you?" Logically speaking, if her man was dragged into the bedroom for tea by another woman, as a woman, she should feel jealous or angry. But it was really difficult to describe her as an ordinary woman. In the next moment, she even said something that shocked the heavens and earth and made ghosts and gods weep. "Why should I be jealous? I like you, and I also like her. If you can drag her to the bed, I'll be more than happy." Seeing Ayam's smiling face, Ryudo almost said, "Are you crazy?" But thinking about the plot of Ayam and Lin Hua in Red Album 2, No Survivors, this woman seemed to have always been a double-edged sword, so it didn't seem strange. However, Ryudo didn't think that Ayam, this double-edged sword, had always been interested in Rue Hui. When he thought of the scene of Ayam and Rue Hui, these two beauties, chatting together, Ryudo couldn't help but take a deep breath. That kind of special scene must be the most beautiful scenery in the world. It was probably only possible to see it with a bug in the game. After sensing Long Do's intention, Young-ji, who was in his arms, smiled and said, "What? Are you interested?" "That's Colored Glaze's mother. Why would I have that kind of idea?" "Really? But as far as I know, Rue Hui doesn't have a husband, and she should still be a virgin." "W8. What? Really?" Regarding the matter of Rue Hui and Colored Glaze, this was information that was not provided in the original game plot, so Ryudo couldn't help but shout out in surprise after hearing it. Of course it's true, so she should lack the nourishment of a man. You can give her more love, that kind of woman will soon be hooked. "Don't joke, I won't do that." Ryudo shook his head and said righteously, "You really won't?" "Absolutely not." "Then why don't we make a bet?" "What bet?" "Within a month, you will eat Rue Hui, or you will be eaten by her." "Are you that sure?" "Because I will do something behind your back." "Don't look at me like that. I'm crazy, don't you know?" "Hee hee." Kiss. Suddenly, Ayam kissed Ryudo's face, and then collapsed in his arms as if she had no bones. She smiled and said, "But that's in the future. Now it's my time. Shouldn't you serve me well?" Hiss. Phew. Seeing the seductive smile on the face of the witch in his arms, Ryudo first took a deep breath, then picked up the vitality potion on the table next to him and drank it all in one go. Then he hugged Ayam and threw her on the bed. That night, it was another night of troubles. Although it was a happy trouble, troubles were still troubles. So when Ryudo reported to the Kamishiro Imperial Garden the next day, what appeared in Rue Hui's eyes was a slightly haggard face. Logically speaking, a 16 or 17-year-old boy like Ryudo should be full of energy, like the rising sun. But in Rue Hui's eyes, Ryudo looked like he was about to burn out, like he was about to become the evening sun. Are you okay? Do you want to take a rest? Originally, Ryudo came over to discuss with Rue Hui about how to deal with Golden Heron Iwasaki Yanasuke, but seeing him like he was about to die, Rue Hui couldn't bear it anymore. I'm fine, don't worry, I can do it. Ryudo smiled at Rue Hui with two big dark circles under his eyes. No, if this goes on, will he suddenly die? When Ryudo received his mission and brought a group of guardian ninjas and Fujiwara to investigate Iwasaki's residence and his movements, it would be easier to assassinate him. Rue Hui couldn't help but feel slightly worried about the future of the young boy. Without a doubt, Ryudo should be IM's man, and only that which could turn a 16 or 17-year-old boy into this. But what should I do? I don't think I can help him, right? Do I have to ask IM to control herself? That would be too stupid. Thinking of this, Rue Hui sighed slightly. However, Rue Hui immediately thought of a person who might be able to help at this time. Ryue, is Ryue here? Yes, what can I do for you? Before the voice fell, a graceful figure landed in front of Rue Hui. As a guardian ninja and a female ninja, Ryue should be very knowledgeable about this kind of thing. After all, female ninja have a special course related to men. So Rue Hui asked, Ryue, actually I want to ask originally. Rue Hui wanted to ask, do you know how to enhance a man's energy so that he won't suddenly die? But when the words came to her mouth, she suddenly realized that something was wrong. Wait, why do I have to ask so many questions about whether the Dragon Do Lord will suddenly die? What does this have to do with me? After thinking for a few seconds, Rue Hui asked Ryue to leave first, and she did want to ask about this matter. Speaking of which, Rue Hui and Ryudo were neither relatives nor friends, and the two were just colleagues. It was quite awkward to talk about this kind of thing. And on the same night, Ryudo brought people to understand Iwasaki's situation thoroughly, and planned to take action the next day to completely eradicate this Yatsuki Yukijin Heron. After discussing the countermeasures and sending Ryudo away, Rue Hui also specifically told him to rest early tonight, and not to go to bed late. Although Ryudo also agreed, he knew in his heart that it was not in his control at all. Whether he could go to bed early or not, to put it bluntly, it still depended on IM's mood. He didn't know if that woman was addicted to the taste of meat, but recently, after eating meat, she pulled Ryudo to accompany her as if she didn't care about her life. That night was no exception. The result of this was that when Ryudo came again the next day, Rue Hui saw an even more haggard face. Looking at that face, Rue Hui suddenly felt her anger rising. You bastard, you're too much, aren't you? He's a 16 or 17-year-old young man. Why did you make him look like this? She didn't know if it was because Ryudo's charm was too high, or because he was the same age as her daughter. When Rue Hui saw this child's miserable state, she couldn't help but feel heartache for him. That Madame Rue Hui, I'm going to go now. No, today's plan is cancelled. You're not allowed to go anywhere. Just as Ryudo was about to carry out the mission to assassinate Iwasaki with a frown, Rue Hui forcefully pulled his hand and pulled him to a guest room not far away. This tug caused Long Do to be a little confused. But not long after, Ryudo was brought to a bedroom with a bed on the floor and incense burning beside the bed. Rue Hui pulled him to the side of the bed and pulled open the quilt and righteously ordered, "Lie down, have a good rest. After you've rested enough, you can go out to carry out the mission." This doesn't seem to be a good idea. You were sent by IM to assist me, so you should listen to my orders. Quickly lie down. Without waiting for Ryudo to refute, Rue Hui forcefully pushed the boy in, and personally knelt beside the bed to guard. What kind of situation is this? For a moment, Ryudo felt that the scene seemed to have become strange. He was lying on the soft bed, next to Madame Rue Hui's graceful and luxurious figure, and his nose could still smell the elegant fragrance. Speaking of which, the scene was somewhat ambiguous. But in fact, Ryudo didn't have any special thoughts about Madame Rue-Hui before. He just treated her as an elder, and treated her with respect. But when he thought of what I said before, Rue-Hui doesn't have a husband. She lacks the nourishment of a man. You will have sex in a month, and so on. He couldn't help but start to think. Could it be that Madame Rue-Hui, she really, after turning his head slightly and looking at the mature body wrapped in the black and red kimono, Ryudo felt his face turn red, and hurriedly closed his eyes and didn't dare to look again. It had to be said that Yongji was indeed a witch. In terms of bewitching people, she really had the skills of a witch. Originally, Ryudo's calm attitude toward Madame Rue-Hui was destroyed by Iam's words last night. It even planted a strange seed in Ryudo's heart. This seed has been deeply buried in his heart, and the next step was to wait for time to irrigate it, and it could wait for the day of germination. This was also arranged by Iam in advance. Calculation, everything was a calculation. Since last night, Iam had been calculating Ryudo and Rue-Hui at the same time. Iam knew that Rue-Hui had a daughter, so that woman had a bit of maternal instinct. In addition, Ryudo and Colored Glaze were similar in age. As long as Ryudo looked pitiful, it was easy to evoke Rue-Hui's maternal instinct. Judging from Rue-Hui's concern for him, Iam's calculation was obviously very successful. But at this time, Ryudo's face was red, but Rue-Hui thought it meant something else. His face seemed to be very red. Could it be a fever? Thinking of this, Rue-Hui reached out to touch the boy's forehead, wanting to check his temperature. But she found that her palm was a little hot because she had been pulling Ryudo, which may cause the temperature to be inaccurate. Rue-Hui subconsciously lowered her head and used her smooth forehead to touch Ryudo's forehead. How to describe it? This was actually a relatively familiar action for Rue-Hui. When she was young, every time Colored Glaze had a fever, Rue-Hui would check the temperature like this. However, Rue-Hui had forgotten that the one lying on the ground wasn't her daughter, Liuli, but another man. A man who had been instigated by Yongji's words to the point where his head was slightly feverish. At that moment, Ryudo only felt a cold and soft object touch his head. He unconsciously opened his eyes and saw that Madame Rue-Hui's face was actually very close to his. Although Rue-Hui stretched her head from aside, the two heads were very close, and the intimate action made Ryudo's face burn even more. Chapter 391. Although Ryudo's body temperature was rising because of Rue-Hui's proximity, she didn't seem to be aware of it. Your forehead temperature is so high. You seem to have a fever. Wait a moment. After lifting her head, Rue-Hui shook her head with a bitter smile, then quickly left the room and asked the servants to prepare cold water and a towel. Although Rue-Hui didn't usually take care of people, she was quite good at taking care of people, especially when she took care of Ryudo, who didn't dare to move because of the fever. Her careful actions made Ryudo want to cry. In the next hour, Rue-Hui's achievements included, but were not limited to the following. She wanted to use a cold towel to put on Ryudo's forehead, but accidentally knocked over the basin of cold water on his head. She was about to feed Long Do the medicine when she took the wrong medicine. She mixed the medicine for menstrual irregularities with warm water and gave it to him. She wanted to adjust the blanket for him, but the corner of the blanket fell on the incense, causing the entire blanket to burn. I'm sorry, I haven't done this in a long time. I'm not used to it. Looking at Ryudo, who was speechless, Rue-Hui's face unconsciously turned red. But it was the truth. Rue-Hui didn't take care of people for so many years. After all, she was the master of Kamiyoshi, so she didn't have to do most of the things herself. In addition, Colored Glaze's health was also very good in recent years, and she rarely had any pain or illness. So Rue-Hui naturally didn't have the opportunity to take care of others. But then again, even when Colored Glaze was young, Rue-Hui's ability to take care of others was quite poor. The reason why Lioli was still afraid of water, even after she grew up, was because when her mother was bathing her when she was young, she slipped and fell into the pool. She would never forget that feeling for the rest of her life. Psychological trauma +1. So right now, Ryudo should feel lucky that he was still alive after being taken care of by Rue Hui. This was not an easy thing to do. But even so, Ryudo didn't complain about the care of a lady next to him, but silently endured a lot of messy care torture. "It's okay, Mrs. Rue Hui. Thanks to your care, I'm much better now." Looking at Rue Hui's blushing face, Ryudo said with a smile. Although Rue Hui's actions just now had been very clumsy, she was indeed sincere, and there was nothing to criticize. "Is that so? That's great." After seeing Ryudo's face seemed to be a lot better, Rue Hui couldn't help but show a relieved expression. Long Do felt that his energy had recovered a little after messing around, so he asked, "Can I get up now?" "Not yet. There's still one last step. Ryue, come here." "Yes." Following Rue Hui's order, the female ninja, with a mask on her face, appeared beside the two of them. When she appeared this time, Rue Suki was holding a large cloth bag in her hand. After the cloth bag was opened, there were many golden needles of different lengths inside. What is this? This is the secret acupuncture technique passed down in the family of the Guardian Ninja. It was learned from another ancient country. It can make your body produce an energy called ki, strengthen the body, and reduce the burden. The chi that Rue Hui was talking about was the thing that warriors cultivated through cultivation. However, if they relied on acupuncture, they could activate it faster. Ryudo was often oppressed by Ayam, causing him to be worse day by day. Since Rue Hui couldn't work on Ayam, she could only work on Ryudo. According to Rue Hui finally asked Rue Hui shamelessly, as long as the ki in the young man's body was activated, then he could have a stronger body, which was the so-called activation of ki. Although Ryudo didn't believe in this, since Mrs. Rue Hui said so, he could only let Rue Suki pierce his body with golden needles. This feeling was really strange. After being densely pierced with a lot of needles by Rue Suki, Ryudo couldn't help but take a deep breath. He only felt as if there was an electric current flowing around in his body. It had to be said that Rue Hui asked her guardian ninja to perform acupuncture on Ryudo. It was just a coincidence, but this time it happened. After resting for half a day, Long Do returned to the unfettered Sky Tower. Only then did he realize that there was an additional chi opening rate in his system. Furthermore, there were a bunch of techniques available for purchase in the shop. My goodness, now Ryudo lacked everything, but he didn't lack money. Therefore, the young man went on a shopping spree and bought 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 and bought. Bought and 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 bought, and now Long Do could finally raise his head and be a human. That night, the young man was valiant and high-spirited, and he directly defeated Ayam. When Ryudo returned to the Kamishiro Imperial Garden the next morning, what appeared in front of Rue Hui was a spirited and high-spirited face. "Ryudo-kun, you look much better than yesterday, that's great. Thank you very much for Mrs. Rue Hui's care. Thank you very much." Speaking of this, the two looked at each other and smiled, only to feel that the distance between them was pulled closer. Of course, Ryudo and Rue Hui's relationship wasn't purely personal. They still had to cooperate to carry out various tasks. Especially when Rue Hui wanted to quickly ascend the Golden Heron, Ryudo also hurriedly helped her clear all the obstacles, and began to lead the Guardian Ninja and the Fujoshi teams to set off a bloody storm in Tokyo. On the evening of the third day, the Great Nippon Bank CEO Iwasaki's body was found dead of a heart attack in his house. As for how the CEO of the Great Nippon Bank died, people had different opinions, but some people in high positions had already smelled something different. There was no doubt that Iwasaki didn't die of a heart attack, but of murder. It wasn't difficult to prove this inference, because on that night, many members of the Yatsuki Dark Crow were threatened by a group of Black Clove people. In tomorrow's meeting, if you don't agree to Kaneshiro Rueihyui's proposal to become the Golden Heron, then wait to collect your family and your own corpse. After kidnapping the family of the CEO of Mitsui & Company, Ryudo mercilessly said this to the CEO over the phone and then hung up without waiting for a reply. That night, among the 12 Dark Crows, except for Kyoji of the Tsukudri group, most of the others were threatened and even had their families wiped out. One of the Dark Crow's bosses was very dissatisfied after his family was kidnapped and directly went to the investigation department to request to capture the culprit, and the result was self-evident. After all, the investigation department and even the entire Metropolitan Police Department were all people from the Tenma group, and asking them to deal with Ryudo and the others was difficult to describe other than seeking death. In the end, Tsukudri Kyoji, who was Rueihyui's old friend, also agreed to this request in a half-threatened state. Rueihyui, do you really plan to continue doing this? Looking at the woman sitting in front of him, Kyoji couldn't help but feel a chill down his spine. The Kaneshiro Rueihyui of the past wasn't like this. Although she was strict in her ways, she was still a good person at heart. So how could she possibly come up with such a plan that focused on threats and murder? According to what Kyoji knew, not only did Rueihyui kill Iwasaki in order to seize power, she also directly and indirectly caused the deaths of more than 100 people. It could be said that her hands were stained with blood, and she had a huge debt of blood. But facing her old friend's question, Rueihyui only laughed coldly and said, Kyoji, this country is already rotten, and the rotten meat naturally needs to be cut off, so that there can be a chance for new life, right? Seeing as we've been friends for so long, I'll give you a suggestion. Tomorrow, hurry up and send all your family members overseas, because this country is about to welcome a new storm, and if you don't want to get involved, leave as soon as possible. Although Kyoji felt that Rueihyui's recent actions were already quite exaggerated, Rueihyui knew that this was just the appetizer. When Rueihyui really climbed up to the Golden Heron position and worked with the Tenma Corporation to completely take over the Yatsuki, Tenmu Iam's actions would truly be a bloodbath. At that time, many of the country's upper echelons would be wiped out, including the Prime Minister, Cabinet, Parliament, and so on. No one would be able to escape alive. Especially after the Tenmu Corporation completely took control of this country, the biggest cleansing would come from the bomb that was still under construction, the Sixth Demon's Wrath. If that bomb exploded, it would be enough to completely destroy this country, and over 80% of Japan would sink into the sea. That was why Rueihyui told Kyoji to quickly send his family members overseas, so that they wouldn't be caught in the crossfire. Damn it crazy, these people are really crazy. Seeing that Rueihyui wasn't joking with him, Kyoji could only curse in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. That's right, it wasn't just Kyoji who was helpless. Many people were helpless as well. Rueihyui was originally extremely intelligent, but because of the restrictions of the Kamiyoshi and the Yatsuki, she couldn't use all of her abilities. Now, with the help of Iam and Ryudo, she completely let herself go, and Rueihyui instantly became another witch, a witch whose style of doing things wasn't inferior to Iam's. Therefore, at noon the next day, Rueihyui brought Ryudo and a group of followers to the Iwasaki mansion, and crowned herself with the crown in the upper-level meeting room, where Iwasaki Yanasuke's body was placed. After the unfortunate death of the Iwasaki clan, the empty Golden Heron position will be taken by me, Rueihyui Kamishiro. Who will take it? Who objects? In the meeting room, Rueihyui looked at all the night crows around her with an elegant smile, as well as the Golden Heron Taka Haramiya, who came to participate in the meeting on the other side of the TV screen. Although most of the night crows were furious, They had no choice but to agree to Rue Hui's suggestion of taking over the position of Golden Heron for the time being. Damn it, Rue Hui Kamishiro, just you wait. After we bring back our families, we will definitely get our revenge. When Rue Hui took the golden chain that symbolized the Golden Heron, most of the night crows couldn't help but turn their heads away, not wanting to see this woman flaunting her power. On the other side of the screen, Takahara Miya, the other Golden Heron, who had been watching the entire meeting, smiled and said, "Not bad, Kenzaki Reich, you've finally gotten what you wanted. Congratulations." From Takahara Miya's expression, although he was smiling, his eyes were cold. Obviously, this Golden Heron was also very unhappy with Rue Hui's actions. After all, she was the one who killed Iwasaki, and this woman even took everything from Iwasaki's body. This was simply outrageous. She didn't take the rules of the Yatsuki seriously at all. Facing this Shinto priest's sarcasm, Rue Hui smiled and said, "Takahara Miyasama, actually you aren't young anymore. Haven't you thought of retiring early? Humph, don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you killed Iwasaki. The Night Crows here only chose to obey because of your threat. You should think about how to secure the position of Golden Heron first." From Takahara Miya's point of view, Rue Hui's radical actions were completely suicidal. In order to take over the position of Golden Heron, she killed the previous Golden Heron, Iwasaki Yatsuke, and then threatened the other 11 Night Crows. It could be said that she had already lost the support of the Yatsuki. Now, as long as Takahara Miya and the other Night Crows retaliated against Rue Hui with her weak Kamiyoshi clan, it would be impossible for her to survive in the face of so many forces. This Golden Heron position would just be a funeral gift. Other than Takahara Miya, most of the other Night Crows present had the same thought. Kenzaki Rue Hui, you have already offended all the higher-ups of the Yatsuki. Now all you have to do is wait for Takahara Miya-sama to call out, and countless forces will come after your life. You won't be able to do much. Are you all thinking that I won't be able to do much for long? Just as Takahara Miya and the other Night Crows were thinking this, Rue Hui smiled and helped them speak their minds. Then, this new Golden Heron looked at Takahara Miya on the screen and smiled. "Takahara Miya-sama, are you really not planning to retire? If you retire now, you might be able to enjoy your old age." What a joke. Takahara Miya glared and said angrily, "Kenzaki Rue Hui, are you threatening this old man?" "I don't dare to say it's a threat, it's just the truth." "Humph. Not only will this old man not retire, but I will also sit in this ISC Grand Shrine for 30 to 50 years. What can you do to this old man?" Before Takahara Miya could finish, a strong light flashed on the screen he was on. Boom. Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound and a flash of light, the scene on the other side of the screen immediately turned pitch black. At the same time, Ryudo, who was standing next to Rue Hui, casually pressed a button, and the image on the screen not far away changed to the exterior of ISC Grand Shrine. This is. When they saw the exterior of ISC Grand Shrine, the Night Crows in the meeting room couldn't help but feel numb, because there was no shrine on the screen. It was just a large piece of debris left behind after being bombed by missiles. You're tuning in to the Echo Reads YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.